certain, Chair, name of an inmate move out of the, from cell 35, requested information being prepared. You are preparing a name. No, Chair, we can't operate like that. This is a delay tactic that must not be allowed by the committee.
Honourable Chair, may I respond, please?
Yes.
This is not a delay tactic, Chair. We left this committee meeting last night at 6 o'clock. The majority of the information requested, in fact, almost all the information requested, is in the administrative department of the Mangaung Correctional Centre. Those staff members work office hours. We did last night try and reach those staff members to start compiling the documents. We are now 1 hour into the next working day. So it's not a matter of delaying, it's a matter of not being able to reach administrative staff after leaving this committee at 6 o'clock this morning and resuming again this morning at 9 o'clock. I did this morning speak to the team, and I've asked them to accelerate as best they can in retrieving these documents and forwarding them to us and trickle them through as and when they become available. I'm not sure why 48 hours was put here, because the intention is to trickle them through as and when we find them, as the administrative staff return to the centre.
And I suggest the following, members, before I note hands, that we will start with JICS. During that period or during that time, just make sure that you populate this document as requested. After JICS, it will be SAPS, then we will call you. I think by that time you would have been able to do some work.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Chair. Just that 48 hours is not acceptable. We want those documents now, so I want to agree with that approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Honourable Pettenbach, your hand was up.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I'm happy with your arrangement. It's fine.
Okay, covered. Okay. I think you may be excused for now. And make sure that one of you makes the necessary contact with your office, and this information is populated as requested.
Noted. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Honourable Pettenbach.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. If you can just remember that I asked last week already for all the a list of all the employees at the Mangaung Correctional Centre, all the employees, and all the programs that they offer, all of them. That also I haven't received, and I asked for that a week ago. So.
Yes, so there will be no reason why you would not have concluded, in fact, supply that information. You had requested that you be subpoenaed after Easter, and it's after Easter, so that information was supposed to have been supplied to us by now. So let one of your operations person be in contact with the relevant office and make sure that we receive that information.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. You are excused for now.
Chair, can I just be clear? You're excusing one of our members to deal with this matter.
Yes.
Thank you.
But you are also excused from the witness seat.
Yeah, Chair. Chair, sorry, I don't know why they went back to sit there, unless it's an indication we must continue with them, because they sat here, we had finished with them. If you are inviting us back, I'm happy to continue with them.
No,
yeah, I think they like the seat.
No, I guess it's very nice.
You can sit here, sir.
I guess it's very nice there. Even the minister's staff was aspiring to be witnesses. So I think it's very nice there. Can we now invite JICS as they are preparing to take the nice seat? Or are you going to speak from there? Okay. No, that's fine. Over to you. Welcome, Judge Cameron. You may proceed. Is a hand?
I apologize, Chair. I forgot to mention Honourable Horn is coming. He's just, again, struggling with a flat battery, so he'll be here.
So, are you making an application in advance of expropriating his time?
I'm stating an intention.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Honourable Chair. Good morning, Honourable Members. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'd like to start by saying that none of us in any positions of power or influence in South Africa have the remotest reason to self-congratulate or feel satisfied. But I do want to say that yesterday it was quite a privilege to see this committee in action and to see how its preparation and its cross-examination skills and its doggedness managed to open up the way. We haven't got to the bottom of this yet, Mr. Chair, but yesterday was a revelatory and informative day. Thank you very much. If I may say a second thing in opening, Mr. Chair, which is irrelevant to the JICS presentation, it's that there are heroes in this story, and two of them are in the SAPS. The first is a Constable Legoa. It's a name that matters to me because when I was in Bloemfontein, my nickname amongst my black colleagues was Legoa. So Constable Legoa was in the Naval Hill police station when he noticed that Dr. Nandipha Magurumana had persistently been coming to claim corpses, and he put a stop. That triggered her urgent application. She didn't bring it in Bloemfontein, where the death occurred. She didn't bring it in Bloemfontein, where the refusal occurred, where the locus was. She brought it to the North Gauteng High Court with a skelmstreek. And a brigadier in charge of legal services in Bloemfontein got an SMS on an afternoon in Bloemfontein, and she said, "What's this about?" And she intervened. She urgently contacted the state attorney in Pretoria, got a notice of opposition put in, and that answering affidavit, which was lodged in August, opened up matters for JICS as well. That brigadier is present today. She's Brigadier Ramorena Tswai, and I'd like to congratulate both those members of the SAPS.
And they stand so that we can see them.
Where's the constable? Where's the constable? Why didn't they bring him? The constable. They brought the
Next
brigadier,
time.
but not the constable. How wena?
So, Mr. Chair, the committee has already established that substantial and informative aspects of this affair, despite the lamentably vague, evasive, and responsibility-shy answers that it got. I also want to say that some of the answers, as this committee has also established, weren't fully accurate. Our lead investigator is Mr. Odoleng Takadu, who's sitting behind me. He was assisted by our on-the-ground Bloemfontein investigator, Ms. Dineo Motumi, and they established that it wasn't just twice that Mr. Bester sought to be moved from his cell to Broadway. It was 3 times. On the 15th of August 2019, the 15th of April 22, and the 30th of April 2022. So these details are important, and this committee, in proceeding with its work, will establish more and more the accuracy of what happened. JICS itself, Mr. Chair, has a limited role to play in cases such as this. Its statutory duty is to inspect, to report on conditions and treatment, to report on corrupt or dishonest practices, to address complaints, and then to investigate deaths, segregation, the use of force, and the use of mechanical restraints. We have no power to investigate escapes or to require them to be reported to us. We have limited resources. Our recommendations are not binding. All of this, Mr. Chair, and here I'm fighting a chance to make an advance plea to the committee. We've got a JICS bill that's been worked on in association with DCS for the last 3 or 4 years before I came to JICS, led by our CEO on my right here, Mr. Missa, and we hope to be bringing that bill to this committee, which will give JICS the autonomy and the powers that it needs. Mr. Chair, for now we have no operational, managerial or policy-making authority, and of course that is why we collaborate with and receive the cooperation of DCS, SAPS and other players. We have provided the committee with details not only of our own investigation and the extensive timeline. We've got our summary timeline up, and we're very happy for our CEO, for Mr. Takadu, to take the committee through the timeline if it seeks that. From our side, we repeatedly stressed the urgency and seriousness of this matter. We shared information, offered assistance. We insisted that the matter be treated as an escape, and we prompted other parties on the status of their investigations, and we stressed, as this committee yesterday did, the public interest, the urgent public interest in this matter. But, Mr. Chair, I'm drawing to the close of my presentation. I would like to make an observation about hindsight. We now know much more about what happened 49, 50 weeks ago. But it wasn't clear, even as the facts started to come before us, even when we got that post-mortem report, it seemed beyond credulity that there was a faked scene and an escape. And I'm told that there was one email to an executive official in June from a person operating under a pseudonym. It's a 2-line email mentioning that there was an escape and a fake scene. At that point, the executive officer of the state had no reason, I believe, to take that seriously. Even the heroic editor and the 2 journalists of Ground Up, Mr. Nathan Geffen and Mr. Daniel Stan and Ms. Marisha Damon, I hope that one of your members, Mr. Chair, will ask these 2 journalists also to stand. I don't want to be presumptuous myself, but I don't know if you will, Mr. Chair. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I'm making a point that even the investigative journalists, after the publication of 15th March, had grave doubts. They said, is this all a setup? Have we been grossly misled? Is this a fantasy tale? And I remind the committee, Mr. Chair, that, for example, we still haven't got to the bottom of how the Bushiris, the notorious Bushiris, escaped from our country. Was it on the Malawi presidential jet? A lot of indications point there, but many people regard it as beyond credence. So we have to be careful about hindsight and speculation. What we have to stick to is investigations, evidence, witness testimony, and media exposés. And that's where the committee's work yesterday was so conspicuously constructive. So that brings me to the end, subject to your requesting us to go through the timeline. I do want to quote Mr. Jainchi yesterday to say that what happened on that the night and morning of the 2nd, 3rd of May last year wasn't a rare phenomenon. It wasn't a rare incident. It was the culmination of a process of degradation and rottenness, the word Mr. Jainti himself used. There is dysfunction at Mangaung. It's a beautiful facility created with a huge amount of money, which will now revert as a constructed institution to the state. But we get witness blower reports. There's a witness blower whose relocation we secured recently with the help of the National Commissioner and the Deputy Minister to Groenpunt from Mangaung. whistleblower who told us that the warders are carrying on a trade not just in Dacha, which occurs in almost every facility, but in hard drugs like tik inside the prison. I would not have believed that easily before this happened, but now almost anything is possible about what happened, and therefore Ms. Breitenbach's request for a full list of people on duty that night, a full list of all the employees, and then finally we also asked G4S months ago whether they had done the lifestyle audit that Ms. Breitenbach also raised yesterday. That's also essential. With that, I thank you and your members. We are happy to take any questions, and I have our full team here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Judge Cameron. There's a hand, Honorable Engelbrecht. Huh? No, I think there's still going to be a presentation on the timelines.
Only if required. The presentation has been before the committee for 8 days, but if the committee seeks it, we can.
Just talk to it, just walk us through briefly.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Good morning. Good morning to all the committee members, honourable members, and all those that are present. So we've put together a timeline that gives you what our minister would call a blow-by-blow shot of what occurred from the very first day. Now, if one looks at this timeline from the 3rd of May, G4S actually reported this unnatural death to what we would call the controller. That is the first point of the death of Thabo Bester that was brought to the attention of authorities. The next day that comes up is the 4th of May, where the post-mortem was conducted on this body, allegedly to be that of Thabo Bester, and which was then obviously taken into the hands of the South African Police Services to conduct the necessary. We as JICS, on the 5th of May, was thereafter brought in on the scene, and we then decided to mandate this unnatural death investigation. We commenced our entire investigation into this matter on the 5th of May, Honourable Chair, honourable members. Moving on to the timeline, one looks at the 19th of May, and I'm using the chronological sequence of events. You would find it in your packs. Dr. Nandipha approached the Pretoria High Court, as Judge has already alluded, to claim this body. And obviously, we've already dealt with this in Judge's introductories. Sworn statements was taken from the investigating officer, recording the suspicious events of that events that occurred on that evening in that cell. Specifically, these statements were provided to Judge Deniso and Judge Van Rijn, who was also tasked by the JP to intervene in this matter on behalf of the Judicial Inspectorate. We move forward in our timelines, and here we take you to the 8th of August, where our investigators, Denio, actually meets with the DCS investigation team. They agree to all collaborate, to share all information on hand, and to commence what we would call a joint investigation into this, what we would call unnatural death that had occurred at this stage in this specific cell, the famous cell 35. On the 11th of August, as we move along, you would find that this, based on the report, a preliminary report that was brought out by our investigator, we prepared an office note. An office note is an internal communication within the Judicial Inspectorate for Correctional Services, informing the inspecting judge of various matters, and in this instance, that the record shows that this body found in the cell does not appear to be that of inmate Bester. And here you can see it, it's already on the 11th of August, this information is known. On the 15th of August, we bring in another senior investigator from our national office in Pretoria to capacitate the team in Bloemfontein, that is Mr. Odeleng Takadu, who is seated directly behind me, to also capacitate the investigation team and give support. They meet also with SAPS, DCS, G4S management, and also try to interview G4S staff and officials and inmates during the course of the investigation. What was striking at this point in time, Honourable Chair, honourable members and guests present, is that the video footage was missing. The crucial evidence of what we had already deliberated on yesterday was missing at this point in time. You'd notice in our Q1 report, we have shared this, we've already touched on this Thabo Bester investigation, it's there. We didn't elaborate too much on it, but we've registered it that this matter is already being investigated by the Judicial Inspectorate. There you find Judge Deniso and also Judge Van Rijn dealing with this matter as tasked by J.P. Musi, and that was from the 12th of October thereon. On the 18th of October, and I'm giving you again what we would call blow-by-blow series, JICS meets with the South African Police Services at JICS' request. SAPS confirms that the inquest has been closed and that the case of murder has been opened. Here you have it again, 18th October. This has now been converted from what we would call an inquest matter and now converted into what we would call a murder. SAPS has reasons to believe that the dead person that might have been smuggled into the cell is a fabricated suicide, and it is actually a escape. So JICS meets the DCS investigation team at JICS' request. DCS does not hand over the report at this stage. They were what we would call still busy gathering the information to conclude what we would call their investigation in this matter. On the 19th of October, and you can see days moving, at JICS' request, JICS meets with G4S Mangaung to arrange the sharing of documents. And here the sharing of documents is all documents that was on hand, interviews, inmates, officials, and obtaining statements, interviews and conducting also that interviews that took place between the 19th and the 21st of October whilst the investigation team was on site at the MCC during the course of this investigation. IJ then writes to Minister on the 26th of October, informing him of this, what we would call alleged death of Bester, and requesting the interventions of the untoward behavior of some of these officials that have brought about this unbecoming situation. Collusions of G4S employees and others, fire that was staged in that single cell, and we brought all this to the attention of our Honourable Minister on that day. I may pause. In my own personal capacity, I met the head of centre in November, early November, round about the 4th, and I've also, when I was presenting the annual report in the province, indicated to him of this situation, and I've also alluded to him that the results of the post-mortem, the DNA results, does not match to that of Thabo Bester. It was brought to the attention of the head of centre during the early November 2022. I will go on with the blows. On the 4th of November, IJ meets with DCS Regional Commissioner in Free State, and he warns her of the gravity of the urgency of this matter, and that he also requests the assistance with regards to the finalization of the, what we would call, investigation report. The RC declines this request based on that she has no dealings with Mangaung Center at this point in time. It is a national intervention, and that MCC reports directly to the National Commissioner, and that the IJ should communicate directly with the NC. A preliminary report of G4S investigation report was received with footage that was incomplete. And when I use the word incomplete, I think you're already well aware that in some places those cameras were actually switched off. And we have those evidence yesterday already presented to the Honourable Committee. On the 30th of November, once again, you would recall, we've covered this in our Q3 report, where you would find, in fact, Q2 report, where you'd find the report was sent to the Minister, Deputy Minister, also once again reporting the unnatural death of the alleged death of Thabo Bester. This was also extensively shared within the correctional services environment. We then took a decision, Honourable Chair and members, to write to Lieutenant General of Sibia of the Hawks and to request his intervention in this matter and also cooperation, and he obliged. We met him. We met him on the 18th of January, 2023, where he had come personally to our offices, met the judge, and also provided his support from a national level, together with the support from the Ministers of Police, together with the provincial, SAP's Deputy Provincial Commissioner. He has assured us that he would give us the necessary support and capacity to bring this matter to book. On the 19th of January, R.C. Moodley advised JICS that any requests, as I've mentioned already, should be directed to the National Commissioner, and that IJ then writes to the National Commissioner requesting the internal investigation report of DCS. Day by day, 20th January goes forth. G4S, Mr. Smith responds to JICS requests for information, but indicates that G4S report is also not yet finalized, and that they are also still completing their reports, and that will be provided to JICS before we meet on the 2nd of February, as already testified or noted yesterday to you, together with all the relevant video footages. On the 25th of January, JICS responds to Mr. Smith requesting that G4S furnishes JICS with its updated report to prepare for the meeting to be held on the 2nd of February, and also to note the critical missing footage that is requested by JICS at this point in time. JICS requested an urgent update on the recovery of the missing footage. The IJ invites SAPS Deputy Provincial Commissioner for the Free State, Major General Modisi, to meet with JICS in early February, and that meeting was also actioned, and you'd find it unfolding in the timeline. On the 2nd of February, as already presented to you yesterday, we did meet Mr. Renzo Smith and also emphasized our concerns surrounding the whole debacle about the alleged death of Mr. Thabo Bester. On the 6th of February, IJ texts our National Commissioner requesting attendance of R.C. Moodley at a planned meeting with DC, and NC texts back to say that the matter is still under consideration by the contract and contract management, and DCS is still awaiting what we would call the DCS final investigation report. R.C. Moodley and her team will not be of any assistance if she does come, because the report at that stage of DCS was not finalized. We move to the 7th of February. At JICS' request, JICS meets with the Free State SAPS at G4S Mangaung management to discuss the progress, and JICS stressed the urgency of the investigation. JICS, during this meeting, learns of SAP's efforts to recover the body in Bester's cell and Dr. Magudumana's attempts to secure a court order to bury this body, and that entire discussion unfolded during the course of that deliberations and engagements. On the 9th of February, the IJ writes again to the National Commissioner informing him of JICS and SAP's conclusions that the body was not that of Bester, and that the scene was extensively faked, and that the inmate Bester may have escaped from Mangaung. JICS asked A, when DCS expects to conclude its investigation, B, steps taken to prevent the reoccurrence of such instances, C, steps taken to apprehend Bester. JICS also inquired whether DCS has formally reported an escape, and if not, when it is proposing to do so. 9th of March, 2023. During the quarterly meeting with the National Commissioner, we meet him on a quarterly basis, on a bilateral, on JICS activities and DCS. JICS reiterated its request for the DCS internal investigation report and the suspicion that inmate Bester is alive and is well, and most importantly, dangerous. The NC informed JICS that he has received a draft report at this stage from DCS contract management and is awaiting a final report, will focus on the contractual implications of MCC or G4S. 16th March 2023, JICS resent a letter of the 26th of October, which was sent to Minister Lamola, once again bringing all the contents of this matter to the attention of our Honourable Minister. JICS also writes, IJ also writes to Minister DM Holomisa, requesting his personal attention to this matter surrounding the alleged death of Bester. IJ writes to G4S once again, Mr. Smith, requesting updates. Has progress been made on the proposed lifestyle audits, which was also addressed extensively yesterday on G4S officials? Have events led to any apprehendable changes in the policies, managements, and operational conducts at Mangaung? Has G4S own reports being amended or updated? Have renewed or further investigations or disciplinary proceedings being undertaken or contemplated? 25th of March, NC Thabo Bester undertakes to provide JICS with the DCS internal investigation report. 27th of March, IJ follows up with NC on the DCS investigation report. 30th of March, DCS internal investigation report is handed personally to me. On the 31st of March, after receiving DCS report, JICS finalizes its own investigation, and once completed, this August committee will be informed of the outcome of JICS investigation. I just want to cover a few aspects before I stop, Honourable Chair. The one is the issue of segregation and whether it was reported to JICS. I can openly inform you that the segregation as of 30th of April was not conveyed to JICS at all. And any segregation in terms of the Act should be brought to the attention of the inspecting judge forthwith. And in this instant, this request was not brought to the attention of JICS. I thank you, Honourable Chair. I thank you, Honourable Members.
Thank you very much to JICS. Thank you for the presentations. Yesterday I started this side. Today I must start that side, going this side. That is fairness. I want to report to JICS that I am being intimidated by this member. Honourable Engelberg. It's Honourable Engelberg, Honourable Glenis Bredenbach, Honourable Horn, Honourable Masego Jele, Honourable Janji, Honourable Ramulubeng, Honourable Yako, Honourable Ngola, Honourable
Order, Chair.
Nuvat Rekhan,
Chair, order.
Honourable
I
Can I
call
ask you to
order.
undertake next round to start here, Chair, because each time I end up being right at the end.
Yes, next time
Thank
I'll
you.
start that side. Okay. Then you will be the last, yes.
But
Chair,
he used
I call order, Chair, I request your indulgence on this one, because yesterday you forgot me, and today I'd at least like to be in the top 3 at least. I'm just requesting to be in the top 3 at least. Indulge me on this one, and please don't kindly allow Honourable Janji to intimidate you.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honourable Yako. Honourable Engelbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I must, before I ask questions, just say that
Honourable Swart, can you switch off your mic?
I found that the JICS report was very well put together, and I could get a lot of information, a very short report with a lot of information. There's just a few clarity-seeking questions I wish to pose. In your timeline, the inspecting judge writes to the minister on the 26th of October 2022, where he is informed of the Bester escape. Was this information also shared with DCS at that point in time?
Thank you.
I can do all the questions and then you can
Yes,
answer.
please.
Okay.
Honourable Member, are you going to proceed or would you like an
No,
answer?
no, please
Yeah.
answer.
I think it was shared at that point. We can confirm. Correct. And may I just say, Honourable Member, Mr. Engelbrecht, that the Minister and I also in October did have a telephone conversation which I raised the JICS bill with him. And at that point I also gave him an oral briefing. Yeah, thank you.
Then it is indicated in your report that the regional commissioner then declined to discuss the matter with you. But according to my information, the DCS controllers at the facility reports to the regional commissioner. Isn't that so? So,
Sorry, Judge. I think in your court you would have said you can't just note for the purposes of record.
Confirming that the regional controllers,
Yes.
the on-site controllers report to the regional commissioner.
okay. Thank you for that. Then, in your quarter 3 report that you sent to the ministry and to the national commissioner that records the Bester investigation, we know now that the minister was made aware of the fact that the body removed from C35 was not Bester, thus indicating an escape and not a suicide. The commissioner was informed about this. In your opinion, or was the commissioner, let me rephrase, the committee was not informed of the suspicions about the Bester escape or death at that time. Was the national commissioner and the regional commissioner aware of that at that point?
They were aware of our suspicions, but may I say again, I think there were two difficulties. The one was the sense of absolute incredulity. The minister also, he reminded me this morning, at the time we were struck with disbelief, despite the facts in first the post-mortem report and secondly in the DNA tests which were available to us, which indicated conclusively as we now look back. So they were aware, and yeah, the answer is positive on that. May I also say that I think the problem was that there were intersecting investigations. They were grinding slowly. In hindsight, those investigations should have been done with dispatch, with alacrity, and that's what we were trying to encourage. But at the same time, I think the incredulity attending this, everyone was guarding their own flanks. It was hard to believe what had happened. I think that was a drag on all the investigations. And again, it might be an easy target, as Ms. Breitenbach said yesterday to the Integriton people. One doesn't want to choose. But I think at the core of the foot dragging was G4S. When we saw Mr. Renzo Smith in his office in Centurion in February or late January, they'd done nothing. They thought that they could get away with dismissing 2 or 3 of the lower personnel, the medium-level management personnel. So I think that the absence of alacrity with those who took on-site responsibility for the disgraceful events of that night, I think that impeded everyone else, because we were all Laatlamikis coming after G4S.
Thank you. Then, on the 16th of January, the regional commissioner was requested by yourselves for a copy of the DCS report. So she took 3 days to respond, saying that, well, please refer these requests to the national commissioner, which you received then on the 19th of January. So after the 19th, was there any interaction between yourselves and DCS on the Bester matter, or was the lack of interaction the motivation for your communication that happened on the 6th of February?
Yes, and that is so, Honourable Member, Mr. Groenewald, and also for our meeting with General Labia of the Hawks, who, as the CEO said, came to see us at JICS with his team. It's not as though we were in daily contact with DCS about this. We prodded them and signalled from time to time. And then we were exploring all possible avenues to get this out into the open.
Well, then 18 days later, on the 6th of February, another request was made by yourselves to the National Commissioner, as you were informed by the Regional Commissioner. In this communication, you again requested assistance from the Regional Commissioner. Is this correct?
Absolutely correct.
In the report, it is indicated that the Regional Commissioner and a team will not be of assistance. Was that your own conclusion, or was that communicated to you by the National Commissioner?
It was in a letter from the National Commissioner who said, lay off on the Regional Commissioner because she and her team won't be of assistance. We were trying to probe what's happening and where and why is it not happening. So we were casting around for the levers that had not yet been pulled and should have been pulled.
3 days later, on the 9th, you communicated again with DCS. You posed 3 questions, which is in the report. Did you receive any answers to those questions? And if you did, when did you receive it, and what was these answers?
We only received the answers when DCS furnished its report to us in the week before our first appearance here last week, and the answers are in that report.
So we now jump a month into the future to the 9th of March this year. Were there any other interactions with DCS? Here you again warn of Bester being alive and well and dangerous. Why was this warning made on the 9th of March again?
So, I think this committee yesterday expressed the sense of peril and outrage which is appropriate to this matter, and we weren't seeing evidence of it. I'm not saying that the Commissioner or either the National Commissioner of Police or the National Commissioner of Corrections or any of the executive officials in government, I'm not saying they didn't feel that urgency, but it wasn't being evidenced to us. So it was an attempt to om vuur onder hulle agterwêrelde te maak, to put a fire into the responses.
Thank you. Why was the 26th October letter to the Minister resent to the Minister?
As a formality, because we wanted an on-record response. I know that the Minister was concerned, but we wanted him and the Deputy Minister to activate the officials over whom they had executive authority to get things going. At that point, the public had been alerted. If I've got my timeline right, sir, the ground-up report, which signaled the full catastrophe, the full disgrace, the full fiasco, was 15th of March. And I can't remember the date of what you are asking me about. If you can just help me with that.
23rd March.
23rd, so it was after that.
Yes.
Yes, it was to bring the executive and public officials in charge of corrections and those responsible for what happened to the sense of urgency that the public wanted at that point.
Then we get to the Deputy Minister. Why was the Deputy Minister requested to give personal attention to the matter? Was it because you thought at the time that neither the Minister nor the Department applied their minds or about the seriousness of this incident, or didn't give the matter the required and expected attention, in your opinion?
We knew they were applying their minds. We knew that they regarded the matter as serious, but we thought that the wheels were grinding too slowly. Now, the Minister has two deputies. He has Mr. John Jeffrey on the constitutional side, and he has Nkosi Patikila Olamisa on the corrections side. And we wanted to bring him in formally as well. We might say that the Deputy Minister has been of assistance to us in the past with internal matters. For example, in a critical matter of healthcare, he convened a meeting which enabled a rollout of a public-private partnership, American-funded, of crucial anti-TB and anti-HIV drugs. So we knew that he could assist us in various ways, and we wanted to put a formal notification on his desk as well. And I think that he welcomed that. I don't have any reason to believe that he didn't welcome that.
No, well, on the timeline, it's quite evident because 2 days later you received the report after you requested the Deputy Minister to intervene.
Correct.
Then I just want to know, in all the meetings that you had with G4S throughout this episode, at what stage did you tell them that the body they recovered from, that was recovered from C35 was in fact not the body of Bester? I know the original, they said that officially they were informed, but I want to know the first time that they were told in a meeting.
They knew long beforehand, as your question implies, Honourable Mr. Engelbrecht, long before, but were closing their eyes to it. We have our lead, our head of investigations, Mr. Leonard de Souza, sitting just behind me. I can't accurately tell you now when we first formally informed them. Mr. Renzo Smith, who is the head of operations for G4S in not just Africa but in the Middle East, he expressed surprise when we met him very early in February or late in January. Surprise about everything we told him. And we were surprised at his surprise. It seemed to us completely inappropriate. May I just ask our head of investigations, please, sir, Mr. Chair? I'm told that we formally informed G4S about the body, about the post-mortem report, about the DNA in early November.
Thank you. Then just in summary, just to make sure that I've got everything correct, the regional commissioner did not want to cooperate, correct?
It seemed to me to be a hierarchical thing. When I raised it in November with her, it was at the end of a long and important meeting about operational issues under her control, because she's not just of the Free State, she's of the Northern Cape. The regional commissioner is here. I thought she went white. And it was evident that matter of grave distress to her, and she clammed up. She said, I have to consult with the National Commissioner. I don't think she was unwilling to deal with it. Maybe she didn't know how to deal with it. Maybe it was a hierarchical thing. So I can't give you more than that. And I thought that she seemed shocked and dismayed by the way in which I brought up the Thabo Bester matter at that early November meeting, where I said to her, this is going to be a catastrophe for the administration of justice. It's a point that's not yet been made for the whole administration of justice, sir, that if glorious felon, criminal can get out of one of the 3 most secure facilities in the country, what does it say about all of us, judges, parliamentarians, correctional officials, police, justice administration? It's a lamentable commentary on what all of us are doing, and that's what I try to convey.
Then the next point is the minister did not act in the way that it would have been expected, despite being informed on the 26th of October 2022. Is that correct assumption?
I wouldn't agree with that. The minister expressed concern. He made a joke with me this morning. He said this morning that when I first mentioned it to him orally, he thought that I'd smoked something. And that's a legitimate response at that point. So I think he was entrusting the operational response to it to his hands-on officials. We wanted him to make more fire beneath their posteriors, and I don't know whether he did that or not. He will be able to say.
Then lastly, the National Commissioner complied with requests only after you, as a last resort, requested assistance from the Deputy Minister's office. Is that correct?
I think it was a long and cumbersome process to get that report together. You've seen, it's a 41-page, very detailed, extremely informative report. Whether it was bureaucracy or other issues, I don't know. But you can ask the National Commissioner. I do believe that the Deputy Minister intervened to hasten its conclusion.
But you did not receive updates as this document was compiled?
Not that I can recall.
And then lastly, and I think you already sort of answered this, but in your opinion, do you think this, the handling of this situation by the department is undermining the criminal justice system in South Africa?
I won't be as grand as that, sir, but I will say that the handling fell short. I think that everyone, including us at JICS, I mean, we had that post-mortem report in August. Your honourable members could be saying to us, why didn't you blow the whistle then? So I feel complicit in the insufficient response, and I certainly point a finger also at the executive officials and at the department, certainly also at G4S, in insufficiently, alertly, accurately, and energizedly responding to this. I think all of that was lacking.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chair, I have no further questions.
No, thank you very much. In the interest of transparency, I am bound to say you have saved 15 minutes, but on the other hand, I know that there are people who are experts in expropriating other people's time. But yes, you saved 15 minutes so that everybody knows. Honorable Glenys Breitenbach.
Thank you, Chair. Can I get you a saucer of milk before I start?
Sorry.
So, Justice Cameron, let me start with the most obvious question. And let me agree with Mr. Engelbrecht that the report is helpful, it's detailed, and bearing in mind what's happened here, a job well done. But then also bear in mind the bar's not high. And of course, the most obvious question is, if you knew when you had the post-mortem report, why did you not draw attention to this matter? Why did you, on your own admission, request that the matter not be made public? You agreed with the police requested it and you agreed with it. Why would that be?
The same reasons, Honourable Member, Ms. Breitenbach. Incredulity, slow-moving levers, and wish to assist, wish not to intrude on delicate processes. When we met the SAPS, we met the 7 top people involved in early February in Bloemfontein on the ground on the advice of General Labia, he said, go to the Free State and see the on-the-ground SAPS members first. They were on top of it, Honourable Member. All of them were on top of it. I met Brigadier Tswai, who was, if she'd not put in that notice of opposition to Dr. Magadumana's Pretoria High Court application, this would have had a very different history. So even at that stage, the police said to us, we've got 2 more witnesses to interview, and we need to interview them in Mangaung, so we don't want anything to be publicized at this point. And we deferred to that. Up to that point, the media had available documents which were publicly accessible, like the affidavits, like the report of Judge Nokutula Daniso from the Free State High Court. So it was only after we knew that they had interviewed the last 2 witnesses that it seemed appropriate to go further. Can I just say, Madam, that I don't have a satisfactory answer to your question. I was part of the same process of slow levers, of disbelief, and of caution.
I understand fully the disbelief, because it still induces a sense of disbelief, even knowing what we now know. A sense of disbelief that somebody in that position could orchestrate such an elaborate scheme, that he could have sufficient time, money, and access to information to grease sufficient palms in a maximum security prison to do this, does beg a belief. But what I find even more astonishing is the fact that G4S has one job to do. They're in charge of a maximum security prison. Their job is to keep people there, incarcerated there, not out, not running around the streets, not living the life of Riley.
Sorry, Honorable Breitenbach, there is noise there and it's affecting us. IT?
And that's their only job. And when something goes wrong, they're obliged to report it to DCS, and then the wheel should be set in motion to do something about it. Somebody's escaped, they need to be found, they need to be rearrested, they need to be brought back to prison immediately. More particularly a serial murderer and rapist. So yes, it does beg a belief, but I agree with you. And forgive me, but you're an experienced litigator. Litigation is not for sissies. You were a serious litigator before you became a judge, before you became a justice of the Constitutional Court, and you carry a huge amount of authority. The respect that you engender in myself and others is enormous. So you have a lot of clout. And you didn't use it here, and I wonder why.
I'm going to evade that question for one point, just to underscore the first point you made. The 2018 video is publicly available. It shows an identifiable incarcerated person incarcerated at Mangaung. The metadata on it could have been examined. That video has been available for months. It was released by Ground Up months ago. And yesterday we were told that we were given evasive answers about the video. So that underscores, not only was he able to do such extensive presentations, he was able from prison or on hospital leave to hook up to a sufficiently connected system to appear on video at the Sandton Convention Centre. All of it beggars belief. Madam Honourable Ms. Breitenbach, you're asking me an existential question. Why didn't I blow it when I saw the death certificate in the course of August? I can tell you existentially, well, who knows whether the doctor was in someone's pay on the other side. It sounds absurd, but everything that occurred here is absurd. the things that Mr. Makgoti Tobukhale's predecessor did seem absurd. Why did he go there on the last day of his tenure and then find that the controller was moved? So you're asking me a question. I acted to alert the public from late September. The people I alerted acted with care and caution and immense responsibility and skepticism, and then started alerting the public. And they've rightly been honoured here, Ground Up, and the reason why Ground Up's reportage has made so much impact here and abroad is because of its care and because of its scrupulousness. So Ground Up did what I could possibly have done on a national stage, but I think it was appropriate for them as journalists in their role, for me not to convene a press conference and waive a post-mortem report. But as again, may I say, Madam, you are asking me questions that I cannot fully satisfactorily answer.
I understand, and I wasn't suggesting for one moment that you should hold a press conference waiving a death certificate. I understand fully that that type of behavior is inconsistent with who you are. But you do have a lot of personal clout. And I'm wondering why you didn't use it to smack the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Police, and the Commissioner of DCS into line. Because I think you possibly have sufficient clout to have done that. Although I also concede that you possibly don't think so.
I hope this doesn't sound like a smart answer, Madam, but that is the role of this committee. And I'm very glad that this committee has been performing it in such an exemplary way.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on. You've explained why you thought it should be kept confidential initially, but that was in August. And the police wanted to complete their investigation, and they had one or two people to interview, but these people, as you say, were in Mangaung. They weren't going anywhere. Forgive the pun, but they were a captive audience. All they had to do was go and take the statements. So what took so long? And why did you give them that much leeway?
I started informing trusted people in the media who have already been identified in the course of September. When Judge Nokuthula Daniso visited on the 12th of October, she sent me a personal message which recorded for the first time. She was there because of a whistleblower, Mr. Khani from inside Mangaung. She was there on the bidding of the judge president. She was writing to me in my official capacity as inspecting judge. I didn't ask her permission, but I did check with her. I have no reason to believe that she isn't happy with what I did, and I shared it was a 5-point report with Ground Up, which then set the two journalists who have been here onto the matter. So, in retrospect, I concede that I don't have a good enough answer, but I've given a partial answer.
Thank you. Now, you mentioned twice in the report that you submitted quarterly reports to the Portfolio Committee, sent the report to the Minister, the Deputy Minister, and the National Commissioner. But in those reports, you draw no particular attention to this matter. In fact, you're almost at pains to make it fade into the background. And so I, for one, having gone through that report, certainly it didn't jump out at me. And it was dealt with along with all the other escapes. And there was nothing in the report to suggest that there was anything sensational or untoward or requiring attention, while you well knew that there was. So the fact that the committee wasn't aware of this earlier is partially due to the fact that there was no attention drawn specifically to this matter. It's listed amongst a whole lot of escapes, a suicide in a cell, and it doesn't stand out from the other. So there are other suicides in other cells, and so let me say that I'm a little disappointed that the committee's attention wasn't drawn to this matter earlier, because if it had been, we could perhaps have dealt with it sooner, more quickly, and maybe, Mr. Bester wouldn't have left the country. He'd already escaped. There's nothing to do about that. But then we may have deprived Tanzania of being the heroes in this arrest, and we could have, been the heroes ourselves, the South African police. But so I'm a little disappointed that the attention of the committee wasn't drawn to this matter specifically. And I assume that, well, you can tell me why you didn't.
I accept responsibility for that. The annual report and the quarterly reports are my responsibility. I sign off on them, and that was my decision. And I think that you are correct to chastise me and JICS as a whole for not doing it earlier. In retrospect, the hindsight thing, I would handle it differently. I don't know quite, I didn't mean to demean your line of questioning by saying I wasn't going to waver. I didn't mean that, but there were things, as your questioning rightly implied, that I could have done effectually and appropriately and in a dignified way. And from Judge Danisa's report of the 12th of October, I thought that we were in an appropriate and ethical way bringing the matter to the public's attention and also to this committee, but I take responsibility for the fact that we should also have much earlier drawn it to the committee's attention, officially and formally.
Thank you. The fact that you did give the information to Ground Up, and the fact that they did such a stunning job with it, certainly is to your credit and theirs. You mentioned that at your meeting with DCS in October, DCS was reporting that they were having difficulty obtaining information from G4S, and you yourself had difficulty. Could you just describe your view? What was G4S's approach to this matter? Why were you having this difficulty? I would think that a company running a maximum security prison under contract to DCS would find themselves in for want of a better way of describing it, a subservient position to DCS, and therefore be willing to supply whatever information. I mean, the disaster happened on their watch. You'd think they would do everything they could possibly to mitigate the damage, and yet here they are being obtuse and recalcitrant. Why do you think that is?
Honourable Member, I think the ideas were, the reasons were effectively canvassed yesterday, very effectively. I think it was evasion of responsibility, accountability. I think it was implications. We told Mr. Renzo Smith I think it was the 2nd of February, that this would have an impact on G4S's worldwide operations. This is a massive company with huge investments and also its local, the Mangaung is only part of it does guarding, as we heard yesterday. So I think there was a defensiveness rooted in self-interest, rooted in a reluctance to take responsibility. There's no doubt, I think you are right to put us under the cudgel, and I accept that. And rightly, no doubt, the minister when he comes and the national commissioner. But I do think that the original and founding sin was committed by First of all, by the operational officials in Mangaung, who must have colluded over years with Thabo Bester and perhaps with Dr. Magurumana, who was visiting him frequently from 2017, as we heard yesterday. And then secondly, beyond the operational officials, the management officials, and thirdly, the executive officials. I think that was the original sin. And while not shrugging off any of the responsibility for not bringing it to the public's or this committee's attention earlier, I think that was the founding sin.
I would certainly agree with that. When you met with Mr. Smith, and I wonder today why Mr. Smith wasn't here yesterday. If he's the regional cluster director for Southern Africa, does he not think that this matter is sufficiently important to require his presence? So, you know, Mr. Chair, at some point I'm going to ask you that we ask Mr. Smith to grace us with his presence. I may have one or two questions for Mr. Smith. But you keep requesting an updated investigation report from them. You keep insisting that there's missing video footage, and you get no joy. They keep refusing. Did they at any point tell you about the matter that we traversed yesterday with the person entering the control room and then the recording going off? And if they did, when did they tell you?
We were not told. The reason we know about that, and the reason ground up reports that there are two figures seen fleeing from the administration block at a few seconds before, after 2:59 and before 0300 on that morning, was because the two people behind me, Mr. Leonard de Souza and Mr. Odoleng Zakaria Tukadu, spent days going through a wodge of video recordings that were dumped on JICS. They found those, it's a split second, I don't know if this committee has seen it, and I've not yet seen, but Mr. de Souza and Mr. Tukadu saw the gentleman, Mr. DiPaolo, go in and saw him going towards the equipment room. Yeah. Well,
So G4S's idea of cooperating and supplying you with information was to, you know, it's like we request for further particulars. You know, when you get a 500-page request, it's just an abuse. Dumped a pile of stuff on you and expected you to do their job.
As Mr. de Souza and Mr. Takadu did. And I think that your colleagues' questioning yesterday of Integriton established that they knew that this had happened. It was, and the cross-examination of Mr. Williams established that it was incontrovertible what happened at 1930, before at 1938 the plug was pulled. And I'm just underscoring what the committee achieved yesterday. G4S did nothing.
So they never ever told you it was up to you to do the trawling and the finding, and they have a kom si kom sa houding.
Honorable President,
Yes, Madam.
you are left with 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Mr. Smith's idea of a response to your request for assistance is to let you know that the report has not yet been completed. This is in January 2023. The report has not yet been completed, and it will be provided before the 2nd of February, and that they have already supplied the relevant video footage to you. That's his response. The relevant video footage, I presume, is the whole pile of stuff that you have to trawl through.
Hours and hours and hours.
Well, to your two officials then, very well done. So on the 20th of January 2023, this is what? 7-8 months after the event. They're still busy compiling a report.
Correct, 9 months.
Busy compiling a report. Did you ever get the report? And what did it look like in comparison to the report we got yesterday?
It was bare bones. And it persisted, if I'm correct. Mr. Missa will correct me, or the gentleman on my right will correct me. It persisted in the fiction that it was Bester who died. I might be wrong. Yeah. It persisted in that fiction. Unbelievably, madam.
Yes, well, they clung to that version until very recently. And in fact, when we visited the prison last week, their representative very vehemently confirmed to me that it was Bester who died in that cell, despite all the information that was publicly available. So it's a version that they cling to regardless, almost incomprehensibly.
No, comprehensively, madam, for the reasons you explored.
Yes. So in February, you meet with Smith and you emphasize that you're concerned that Bester has escaped. And still, they cling to that version. There's a serial rapist and murderer on the loose in South Africa, has rape survivors trying to recover and live their life, and may run into him at any time. And G4S continues to say it was Bester who died in that cell, and they do little or nothing to remedy the situation.
That is accurate, Mr. Chair, Honourable Mr. Chair, Honourable Member.
But the impression that I gained from your report is that there was a lot of reluctance. A lot of reluctance. You got not very satisfactory cooperation from DCS initially. I don't know if it improved as time went by. But a lot of passing the buck, so I can't deal with this, above my pay grade. Everybody not wanting to handle this hot potato. And even the police, disappointingly, are still not finished with their investigation. And we're now in April 2023. It's astonishing that everybody knew that there was a murderer and a rapist on the loose, and nobody did anything with any sense of urgency to rearrest him. Until now. Until a week ago, this became a topic of public outrage. And then all of a sudden, everybody's in action. Again, once the chicken has flown the coop, just like the Guptas, they let them go first, now they're trying haphazardly to extradite them. Bester's gone. Lucky Tanzania was awake and caught him. But only a week ago was there any urgency in this matter. I find that astonishing. And I'd like your view on that.
Well, I've accepted that I exhibited the same kind, perhaps in a less culpable or demonstrable extent, the same kind of insufficient urgency and outrage and alarm. Perhaps in October, instead of only alerting Ground Up, we could have called a media conference to express our provisional views. The trouble is that our reports are carefully produced, and I've no doubt the same is true of DCS, and we saw the care with which that 41-page report is produced. So I concede that everyone should have been smarter, more on the ball, quicker, more alarmed, more outraged, more dismayed, and more urgent. And I include myself in that.
Well, that's very generous of you, Justice Cameron, but the fact of the matter is that JICS has a niche mandate. You have limitations in which you operate. It's not, you're not the South African police. You are not the Department of Correctional Services. So your mandate is somewhat limited. But you're having alerted DCS and the Minister of Justice about the fact that, in all probability, Bester was on the loose. That's what fills me with incredulity, that there was no action there, that there was this sort of armchair approach given the fact that this particular person who's clearly a danger to society and clearly had rape survivors out there trying to live their lives and hoping not to run into him in checkers. And nothing was done to support those people, to warn them, to protect them. That's absolutely unforgivable. And that is my problem here, that there was no urgency there until a week ago when it became sort of unavoidable to do something, and then they did it. You say when you told the minister that of the story, he thought you had been smoking something.
No, he was
As a
making...
joke. No,
Sorry,
as
madam.
a joke. Yeah, no, as a joke, I accept. But, oh, this morning.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, he didn't say it. It was a serious conversation, and he... Sorry for interrupting you, ma'am.
No problem. Well, you told in October, you told him.
Yes, madam.
And the minister failed to alert this committee as well. You don't have to answer that. It's a fact, and I'll put it to him. The deputy minister also failed to bring it to the attention of this committee. Despite several interactions, I found that somewhat disappointing. Do you not agree with me that DCS stands in a contractual relationship to G4S, and DCS is the senior partner in that relationship?
It's the constitutionally responsible partner.
Yeah. So when G4S says to us they need to be summoned because they have this contractual confidentiality issue that the minister is sitting here, the commissioner of correctional services is sitting here, could release them from that immediately. There's honestly very little need for this production.
May I answer on their behalf, because I've scrutinized that as well. The National Commissioner took the view, on legal advice from within his executive office, that the invitation to G4S constituted Section 111 permission. I agree with that. I sat here yesterday, and again, I make your caveat that one doesn't want to kick a dog when it's down. I'm not referring to G4S's dogs, but it's an easy target now. The explanation provided for requiring a summons from this committee was risible. It was laughable. The National Commissioner wrote them a letter saying, you are invited here. That constitutes a statutory permission under the Correctional Services Act. This whole thing of seeking to do the public a favor by being required to be subpoenaed is bogus. It's ridiculous.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Can I just make one statement and I'm done? But it does reflect their approach to this entire matter.
Of G4S, but
Yes.
I do note that the Commissioner took the view that his letter inviting them to come here, as instructed by the Chairman and the Secretary of this committee, constitutes permission, and I think that conclusion was warranted.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Horn.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning from my side, Justice and the team. I firstly want to make the statement that I believe the reason that it's not without purpose or reason that in our country we ultimately settled on a judicial inspectorate of correctional centres and not a civilian oversight body. Of course, your ICCVs do incorporate that aspect. But that and while we are still grappling with your true independence, the whole purpose of installing a judge at the head of this inspectorate is ultimately to tap into that experience, the judgment, the insight, but also the gravitas. Your experience of a slow process of investigation, and ask your views on what informed this? I think you are on record that maybe it was also informed on the one hand by disbelief. Was that the only thing you experienced when dealing with from G4S to DCS to the SAPS and the Minister?
Thank you, Honourable Member. I think it was, and it was also because, as I've said, the principal operational responsibility, notwithstanding the managerial and oversight responsibility being DCS's, the principal operational responsibility was G4S's. So I'm casting around in the air now. If DCS said, well, we need G4S's accounting for this first, we're not responsible directly operationally for the escape. They escaped from a facility for which G4S is lavishly paid per prisoner, as was explored yesterday. So the disbelief was part of it, but it wasn't the major disabling factor.
Okay, so if we then go to the and I want to pick up with you regarding that primary responsibility of G4S later on, but there's of course also the possibility that the lack of alacrity, as you put it, was also informed by, to an extent, a culture of hoping and maybe experiencing that some of your potential problems, if they ignored long enough, will go away. Is that true?
Absolutely, sir.
And then if we get to the agreement, I want to say, of which you were part of, to keep the investigation confidential, and my colleague Ms. Breitenbach has touched on the consideration of the risk that the escape, or I see some people say we shouldn't call it an escape, we should call it a walkout, the risk that it posed to the general populace, but specifically also women. In hindsight, do you think there was a justification to agree by all of the role players to keep this slow, ongoing investigation confidential?
So, I think so, provided that constant prods were being delivered. We tried to do that, maybe not enough, but there's no doubt, for example, when we saw the 7 senior Free State officials of SAPS in Bloemfontein, that they felt that their investigation would be jeopardized by further disclosures. They felt that the media coverage given might jeopardize it. So again, I say, sir, and I'm only repeating that we must be humble in bringing hindsight to this.
Yes, obviously that's something we will take up with them as well, but from where I'm sitting, I would think that let's say the short term, keeping it under wraps, could be informed by a situation of, we have a certain number of people, officials, who's within our sights, and we want to not lose the element of surprise. Or B, we've now come to the conclusion that Bester is out there, given the fact that the doctor was early on identified, I think, or as your note says, on the 11th of August, implicated, that we don't want to lose the element of surprise when we're going to engage the doctor. But now, as we sit here, none of that happened. So let's say the reasoning behind an agreement that we will for now keep this confidential, juxtaposed to the risk for to the general populace out there, none of that ever ultimately materialized. Would you agree?
I think that's fair, sir. Can I just give you an example of how cumbersomely this works? And this is not an excuse, it's an attempt to enlighten the committee. We didn't know about Dr. Magudumana's urgent application, the one sneakily brought in the Pretoria High Court. We didn't know about Brigadier Tswai's answering affidavit until we met with the SAPS in Bloemfontein in the first week of February. That was like gold to us. And it was possible for me, because those were matters of public record available in the Pretoria High Court, to make that available to media sources after the meeting. But that, especially the SAPS answering affidavit opposing the relief that Dr. Magudumana sought, was very valuable to us. So why we weren't alerted in August that there'd been an urgent application, why we weren't alerted that there'd been a very detailed and careful legal response to Dr. Magudumana, why she wasn't arrested for perjury, because her claims were demonstrably and verifiably perjurable already in August. Why all of that was not done, I can't answer.
Okay. So I want to turn to and obviously rightfully so, as you also indicated, the first and primary focus has been on G4S. As the inspecting judge, have you, when you took office or thereafter, taken the trouble to sort of analyze and dissect that relationship between DCS and the two private companies who are their partners in these public-private partnerships that do exist?
It's, if I may say, it's an extremely apposite question. It was one of the first things which concerned me, because I had visited Mangaung Max when I was in the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein as an inspection. At that time, there was litigation brought by the Centre for Applied Legal Studies at WITS in order to get the contract. The minister, I know, was equally concerned about this. What exactly were the terms that his predecessors in government in 2002 subjected the public to? We got the litigation by Kells eventually got a copy of the contract with G4S and its associated holding and other companies, heavily redacted. It took out all the financial information and other important items. So it's a long answer to your question, sir, but yes, we were concerned, we were interested. It's been a matter of deep concern to us. And I think perhaps the root cause of the problem was that contract concluded nearly 25 years ago.
Okay, and then in terms of, let's park the financial aspects. I mean, there's lots of arguments out there as it is, whether that's value for money, and then seemingly people seem to forget that ultimately a very valuable piece of infrastructure will be that of the state or the department. But in terms of the contractual agreement, would you agree that it does not sketch a situation where DCS is without authority or power ultimately, and as a consequence also without responsibility?
Correct, sir. And that is the power that the minister exercised in order to withdraw management power from G4S.
Mm. So therefore it wouldn't be correct to ultimately say we were dependent on G4S primarily to investigate, and while we've done an investigation and we've removed controllers, because that's where our failure lies. From a perspective of the responsibility of DCS, it's not as simple as that in terms of the contract. Would you agree?
It's not as simple as that. Thank you.
Okay. And looking at the perspective of your, let's say, your core mandate, and specifically the use of the word corruption there, would you agree that that specific term within the context of a public-private partnership would become very important whenever you deal with an investigation of this nature, focusing on an institution where there is this public-private partnership?
Exactly right, sir.
And to what extent have you, in your investigation, focused on that?
Considerably. As the committee has heard, we have 2 on-the-ground independent correctional centre visitors at Mangaung, together with their colleagues at Grootvlei, which is adjacent. And as I indicated, there's a whistleblower who recently, and now I consider credibly, has made the most astonishing revelations. Allegations that the warders seized the cell phones in cell A and then sell them on that same occasion, make sales in cell B. Things which seem beyond credence, but which are no longer beyond credence. So we have been greatly concerned, we have been burdened by this, and we rightly embrace it as part of our responsibilities.
Okay, so that would hopefully lead to further outcomes, but in terms of your investigation of this unnatural death as it I think originated, to what extent did your ICCVs and information from within the centre itself assist, if at all?
It definitely did assist, and Ms. Daneo Matumi, who until we brought in Mr. Odoleng Takadu, she was highly attentive to that. She's our Bloemfontein investigator, and she was attentive to that. And her preliminary report, which put us on warning, as Ms. Breitenbach has rightly pointed out, from the course of the month of August, that indicated her conclusions on that score. There must have been massive, it was put yesterday, this is an extraordinarily intricate operation which must have involved far more than only the G4S officials on site that night. We heard yesterday how it involved months of preparation, probably false starts. With yesterday in the examination of in Technitron, weren't all those switch-offs preparatory? Weren't Bester's previous sick calls preparatory to seeing this done? So we were acutely aware that there must have been extensive corruption, both laterally and hierarchically. And this committee started yesterday getting to the bottom of that.
Okay. On your timeline, and I just want to understand this properly, in respect of the 18th of October, the statement is made that SAPS requests JICS' assistance in securing the expert assistance of the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigations, or the Hawks. Could you maybe just explain what happened there?
Mr. Chair, I wish that some of the questions weren't being asked. It's internal to SAPS. There was some doubt about the proficiency and alacrity being brought to bear by the local investigative team by SAPS. That's why when we met them, the 7 people in charge, it was incontestably impressive to see that all of them were on top of the nuances and were able to answer the questions that Ms. Motumi especially was putting with Mr. Takadu to them. So it was to do with nuances of intra-institutional responsibility, trust, and conduct.
Okay, but from where I'm sitting, I'm finding it strange that if you, as a, let's say, a station-level investigative team, find that you might need some more specialized assistance from within the structure, that you ultimately feel that you're dependent on another role player to make that happen? I mean,
We do find ourselves in that position that our good officers or our trusted officers are sought in this way by members of the public, by inmates, and by government officials. I don't find it extraordinary, unless I'm missing the nuance of your question, sir.
yeah, no, let me put it in a simple way. If I, as the investigating officer, find that I'm out of my depth, what prevents me from asking my commanding officer that we involve the Hawks? Why should you ask the inspecting judge to make that happen?
So I can think of many, many, many reasons.
And would one of the reasons being that you uncover that there's, we've talked about corruption, involvement of people, not only those officials who work at GFS, but possibly even a broader scheme or a bigger scheme of corruption. Would one of the possible reasons being that you feel that ultimately this is, so to speak, above your pay grade? And did you get that sense?
Honorable Hall, you are left with 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair.
Chairperson saves me.
10 minutes.
I didn't. No, sir. I can't truthfully say I did, but one of the difficulties of restoring trust in the whole administration of justice, including the judiciary and the NPA and the police, is that there is evidenced low levels of public trust in the police. It's a cliche that there are many police officers, and we met them. We have some of them here this morning who stood up earlier, who are doing a competent and courageous job, but there are many who are not.
Thanks. Let me use that to touch base with you regarding the last aspect, and I don't want to prod obviously a sore point too much. I think my colleague did much to solicit from you the fact that quite possibly you should have brought the committee on board earlier. But, however, I just want to go back to your report of the 30th of November. I've had a relook at it because, as you would be aware, I think you were part of a bench that chastised Parliament heavily about our inefficiencies in respect of oversight. Now, the way it's been reported, apart from the fact that it's slotted in there with in between 10 other investigations, it was said that the name of the reporters more than meets the eye, which is quite apt in the circumstances. But then, and that's now end of November, it says, inmate burned to death in a single cell. Now, by end of November, of course, that would clearly be factually incorrect. Was this a conscious decision or just an oversight?
Well, you're offering me the way out. It certainly was an oversight, and it's sort of sogenaamd inmate. Maybe we should have put it in quotation marks. But your point, if I don't sound patronizing, it's a good point, and it certainly wasn't conscious. We were going to stick to, definitely not. But yeah. It's a good point. Thank you.
And then the last issue is this, and I mean it's now well documented, and I don't want to detract from it that in this country, we're heavily dependent on investigative journalism to uncover improprieties, if I must use a euphemistic term. But given the fact that you're well aware of, and you just now referred to the lack of trust in other role players within the administration of justice value chain, given the fact that there's also a fairly low level of trust in this legislature and its ability to exercise effective oversight, do you think it was fair to the legislature for you to rather involve investigative journalists than the legislature as a first point of let's say, escalation within the system?
Another good point, sir, or both. Looking back, because it was at about the time that we were putting together, and the person responsible for putting the report together is Ms. Cupido, and I finalize it. After it's been through the CEO and his team, I finalize it both. That should have been, and both could have been done.
Thank you very much, Honorable Juan. Members, can we take a comfort break for 10 minutes? I think we can start. Just before we start, I think I committed a grave mistake. I should have dealt with this issue yesterday. There are people that we did not thank who have made it possible that this meeting proceeds. That is the committee secretariat and the legal services and the secretary to Parliament and the speaker. They worked through Good Friday, 24 hours. I think it's important that we should really say that without their hard work, we wouldn't be here from yesterday and today. Thank you very much to the Secretariat, the content advisors, the legal advisors, the Speaker, because without her instruction to the Secretary to Parliament, those subpoenas would not have come out, and to the Secretary himself for acceding to our request at a very short notice. I think it's important on our side to express a word of gratitude to them. Honorable Maseko Chele.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And also, thank you, Judge Cameron and your team for this presentation. That was very simple and clear for one to follow, as you have put it. Good morning, everybody. Chair, I think I would start with the question. I wanted to find out from the judge your chronological events of your engagements with SAPS, DCS, and G4S. I'm looking at your dates from the first one. It is the 5th of May. No? Is it the 5th or the 3rd? Until the, I can't see properly, I don't have spectacles. The 5th, 25th, if I'm not mistaken. This information from these dates, it was during the time when you were doing investigations on the matter. Was due to you doing investigation on this, on the matter?
Madam, I apologize profoundly for the distraction. Could you just repeat the last part of your sentence?
I'm saying the dates, the chronological events that you have put here from the first date of May, which is the 3rd one, until the 25th. I just wanted to find out, it is during the time when you were doing your own investigation when they give you this information?
Exactly, ma'am.
Okay.
The way it works is we've got a mandatory unit, which is based in Cape Town at the moment. It's being moved up to HQ in Johannesburg. And the death was reported to them by the controller almost immediately. That's what we clarified yesterday. And then reported some 7 or 8 days later by G4S. Then that unit alerts Mr. D'Souza that there's been a death. And Mr. D'Souza immediately was suspicious because his uncertainty and alarm was activated in May already because there'd never been a death by fire in Mangaung. This is a facility that is rightly lauded as being top class, single cell. How do you commit suicide in a single cell by fire? By putting the mattress on top of yourself. So it was a remarkable event in and of itself. So we started then, and Ms. Mutumi, under Mr. D'Souza's direction, was investigating from that date.
Thank you. In your preliminary report, you indicate that this information should not be made public. And when I read also somewhere here, also when you met with DCS, they also said the information must not be public. Even the SAPs with the issue of the DNA, they said the information must not be public. So my question is, could it be maybe the reason for the delay? Because I don't want, because everybody, you said it yourself that it should be public and it's confidential. So does it mean that everybody treated this thing the same way you took it?
That is correct, Madam Honourable Member. The hope was, and my surmise was, that by keeping it confidential, there'd be activation of a recovery squad to put him back behind bars. So there were real reasons to keep it confidential at that stage, but towards the end of September, already it became evident to me, I wouldn't say clear, but it became evident to me that we needed some element of publicity. Mr. Horn and Ms. Your colleagues, honourable members, have indicated to me that I should have perhaps written to Mr. Bulelani Magwanisha, the honourable chairperson, as well at that time, and I take the blame for not doing so. But at that point, there was a genuine reason that you could jeopardise delicate SAPS investigations and recoveries by alerting him or alerting the co-conspirators, by alerting the people within G4S who must have facilitated this.
Okay, thank you. Follow-up question on that one. Could this be the reason why? Because now it comes out as if the department did not do anything. DCS, they were reluctant in speeding up issues, the minister and all that. Could this be the reason to everybody that everyone was treating this matter with caution?
Yes, it is the reason, ma'am, but it's also a reason for criticism, as I've indicated. So while I think that hindsight is an infallible wisdom after the event, I also think that all of us should have moved more smartly. But there were reasons at the time for disbelief, for caution, for moving. Even the investigative journalists were gobsmacked. They were astounded. It just seemed beyond any form of credence, like the presidential jet for the Bushiris. Who would believe it? Maybe that's more credible than what happened here. So there were those reasons, but at the same time, even giving those reasons full weight, we should have been smarter.
And now I think in the line of the chair opening this session, in thanking the committee, we must also thank the journalists for alerting the country about this matter. Would you agree?
Very, 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 very firmly and devoutly, I agree. Thank you.
Okay. In your report, there is, when you were doing your investigation, there were groups of whistleblowers. I can't say whistleblowers exactly at this moment, but I'm saying the people that you spoke to, those who gave you information, the officials, G4S, is it G4S officials, and then at the center, the inmates, and who else gave you information?
There was an official who has a pseudonym who wrote to the Deputy Minister a two-line message making sensational allegations without corroboration and without any references, without anything. And my respectful view is that if I get something like that in my inbox, it's very difficult to know what to do with it. It's like saying that, President Ramaphosa has landed on the moon. What do you do with it? You aren't given details. But it is correct that we were supplied with very helpful and important information by whistleblowers from within who felt that their lives were in danger after they wrote to us. And in 2 cases, we facilitated relocation of those 2 inmates who supplied us with information.
Okay, thank you. Could you say that if we can handle this issue of the whistleblowers in the center properly and give them that comfort that if you come forward and give us this information, you can get more information? Because I asked yesterday the gentleman, the G4S, about the whistleblowers. They could not answer that one. Could you maybe say something about that, that maybe we can get to the bottom of this information if you can do something with the whistleblowers in the center?
I don't have much to add to what you've said, ma'am, but I do think that if there were an assured way of protecting whistleblowers at all levels of the corruption in our national life, we would all be much better off. It's a well-established matter of record that whistleblowers are given insufficient protection, and there should be much, much more done for that, also in correctional centres.
Okay. No, I wanted only in particular in this case, because we want people to come forward and we want people to know that they are protected and they will be safe. But let's go to the next one. There is somebody in your report that you are saying is the official, you call that person, is it the official by the name of Snowy? I've written it somewhere. Yes, who is this person?
I think it's an anglicization of the first name of Mr. Sonoy Motswara. That's what I inferred, but we were only told from the whistleblower that it's Snowy. But we may find that the gentleman who's now on trial with the father of Dr. Mogadumana is colloquially known as Snowy.
Oh. So now I want to know, yesterday when I opened my questions, I did mention the issue of the code of the judges. And from the report here, I did say that, yes, they gave us a very beautiful code and the good things that, how the building looks and all those things. But they don't tell us exactly what is it that they know inside. And in your report, you mentioned judges. Because the names came out yesterday about those judges, the one that Honorable Janji made a follow-up. We still get these judges. Do we have information about their report on this matter? Because it seems as if there were 2 judges. Is it the same judges? Because from the names I got it, it was like the same judges. So it means these judges they must give more, they might give us more information on this issue. Is it possible?
Thank you, ma'am. I don't think these judges will be able to. The Judge Taron visited Mangaung as part of the Constitutional Court's prison visits program. We are hoping, with the backing of the new Chief Justice, to get that prison visits program extended to all judges and all High Court divisions and all magistrates divisions as well, because magistrates are allowed to visit prisons within their jurisdiction. So Judge Taron's visit was done as part of a regular Constitutional Court. All judges in the Constitutional Court, as part of the program, are asked to visit prisons every year. The visit by Judge Nokutula Daniso and Judge Ilse van Rijn was mandated by Judge President Kagni Musi of the Free State after the whistleblower wrote to him. And they went there, and then Judge Danisa wrote privately to me. And that is what I furnished to Ground Up at around about that same time, after not asking her permission, but mentioning to her what I was planning to do out of respect to her, but not seeking to implicate her. Then they delivered a report later on the 21st of December, and that report is what G4S quotes from.
Thank you. So does it mean also themselves they were disappointed by the fact that there is a missing video tape?
The ultimate report of Judges Daniso and Van Rijn doesn't record any contentious details.
Thank you. I just want to find out from you, would you agree by now that this investigation will never go, even will have difficulties even in court without that information of the tape, which is, I believe, is with the officials of G4S?
I think there's going to be more and more and more proof and more exposure of all those involved. And that's why it's good work on the part of the NPA and the police to bring those two people before court, because one of them might be a source of more information as to who was involved. I don't believe that the operational officials that night, or even their overseers, were fully responsible for what happened. I think there must have been a far, far larger operation involving many people inside G4S and outside G4S. So I think that there is a lot of proof, and I think there will be more proof, and that's why this sitting of the committee, and that's why the chastisement of me by your colleagues for not bringing this committee in 6 months ago is justified, because this committee process is cleaving open the facts that occurred and will continue to do so.
But we still, Judge Cameron, we still don't have the tape. Have you asked G4S when you were doing investigation there that this tape is important and we want it?
Yes, ma'am.
It must come.
Yes, ma'am. We were very insistent on that. And because of the plug being pulled out, the crucial cameras were all off for 9 hours, 38 minutes, from 7:38 that evening until 4 the next morning. So it is ludicrous that you've got this system that works always except when you need it. So we immediately asked for the tape. I had an experience in the Constitutional Court during the Zuma presidency, something on which you and I have had an exchange here before, when my desktop was stolen under extremely suspicious circumstances from the Constitutional Court. I hope that those who stole it were hoping to find all sorts of strange things on it, because there was nothing, because of the way the court works. But that night too, the Constitutional Court has got this marvelous camera system with backup recordings, and this one isn't DVS tapes. This one is on hard drive discs. And miraculously, the only camera that wasn't working that night was the one covering my chambers. So I've had experience with this. I knew that when we got these first reports that that camera footage will be missing. And that's still the case now. The crucial camera footage is missing, but I'm confident that despite that, in answer to your question, there will be sufficient evidence to bring a large number of co-perpetrators to book.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with you. There will be a lot of information coming in assisting this. But that portion, that part that is missing, is from the discussion here, it looks like it is key. I just want to find out, there is an allegation that the Mr. John, with the surname that I can't mention, maybe they will assist me as they assisted me yesterday, that before he left, he went to that room. And there is no record of him going to that room before he left, immediately before he left. So we don't have even that record that says he was there. My question would be, could it be possible that maybe he was going to give instruction that don't forget that within this time frame this should happen? It's a question.
It is possible, ma'am, and I'm unable to assist further than to say it might have happened.
Honorable
Thank
Chair, you are left with 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to find out, would you agree that DCS trusted G4S and that trust was broken to a point that even today there is a litigation between the two parties? Could we say that the relationship is no longer there? This marriage must just end. What is your view on that?
I would say so. I would say that the breaches have been outrageous. I do agree that DCS trusted G4S, but I also think, for the reasons that have been debated with me previously, that there could have been more alacrity in supervision and in kicking the right portions of the anatomy from the DCS side.
Is it not ironic for the G4S to take the DCS, in fact, to be in loggerhead this way with the DCS when DCS is expecting much from them? Even to this point, they have not even complied in terms of accountability to bring forth information that we are sitting here about. Is it not ironic to you, Judge, and the team?
I might be missing your nuance, madam, but it is paradoxical that there's a clash between these two contractual partners who should be in harmony in securing criminals inside correctional facilities and ensuring that those facilities are well run. And their respective responsibilities on both sides, which weren't fully maintained. Oversight on the DCS part and simple operational efficiency and integrity and care on the part of G4S. But perhaps I'm missing your nuance.
No, I think my last question, Chair, on this one, it is on the issue of the value for money, and Honorable Hon asked it, but I will put it this way. Would you agree with me that the G4S are here only for money, nothing else? Thank you, Chair. That was my last question.
Thank you, ma'am. You're asking me for a view on a huge public issue, which I will give. I wouldn't have given it while I was on the bench. I'm very much in favor of public-private partnerships. We were trying for years on the Constitutional Court to get a public-private partnership, to get Constitution Hill developed. And we came almost to the point with parliamentary backing, with President Motlante's backing at the end of his tenure, his 7-month tenure. So I think properly supervised, properly negotiated, we can do a great deal together in the public sector with properly managed private enterprise ingenuity and very hard work. So that's my view, ma'am, since you asked it. But I see Ms. Yaka has put her hand in the head, her head in her hand, so I hope it's not because of my entrepreneurial streak. But that's my view. Thank you for asking
No,
it.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Jelle. You have served 7 minutes. I hope it will not be expropriated. Honorable Janche.
No, thank you very much, Chair. If I save time, it can be given to my deputy. So that will be shared.
Who's the deputy? Ola.
No, thank you, Chair. Maybe before I invite the inspecting judge, Judge Cameron, just to indicate this point, Chair, my preoccupation. I think the central point of what we're doing, I want to repeat the point, that ours is about checking the functionality of the institutions that we have and the effectiveness of the systems within those institutions. And that's, I carry that throughout so that we don't lose the focus. We can easily lose focus on many other issues that are incidental to the real work that we need to do. And for that, I want to start with an appreciation commentary to JICS. And maybe for those who don't know, so JICS is an institution that has got a very modest budget. This current financial year, JICS operates from a budget of 78 million, having to monitor a multi-billion institution of over 23, 25 billion in the correctional services. That's up by 2 million from the previous year. Now that is JICS. But when you read the report of JICS presented here, it is very clear that from the takeoff, from the point when they started, and I think that's the 5th of May, there's what I call a consistently focused manner of doing things with limited resources, which says to you the issue is not how big the size is, their agility to do the work that they need to do and get results out of that. It's a lesson kind of going forward, because and on the 10th of August 2022, they would have drove to even the establishment of a multidisciplinary team where all role players were brought in based on their consistent insistence on how they want to do work. And that's really the appreciation I want to say. This is good work that you have done. It's demonstrated throughout the process. And I don't know, maybe the only question I can ask there is, could this have been a better and quicker process with a differently positioned and designed JIC? Just your quick take on that. Should be an easy one.
Wow. Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I think so. I think so. We are battling for JICS's final autonomy and independence, for an extension of its powers, so that we don't want to command DCS or its operating contractors what to do, but we want to know why they don't follow our recommendations. That will be built into the bill that will come to this committee. But the answer, sir, is very definitely with a repurposed, enhanced, and slightly, we're asking for very little, which eventually we've persuaded Minister Godongwana and his Treasury to give us. With a very little enhancement of budget, we'll be able to do a lot more. Thank you, sir.
Okay. We will be here, walk that journey together. Maybe just a few quick pickups. I'm hoping that you'll be able to deal that if you can. Just the first quick point as part of your work. and I would have asked this visitor register here. Do you know when the last time the notorious doctor visited the prison, the correctional center?
It was very shortly before the escape, if I'm right. Mr. Leonard D'Souza and Mr. Takadu will quickly pass the answer to me.
I can pause for that so they can pass that answer.
Thank you, Chair, honorable members, IJ and CEO. According to the reports that we received from G4S, the last visit of Dr. Nandipha, it was around April 2022. 2022. Yes.
You can find out the exact date. I'm interested in the exact date. I'm interested in the exact date. I will give you to, not now, to assist us with that, because I think it's part of your oversight work that you do, and I think you would have picked that up. Hence, I'm posing the questions to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Just to confirm on record, you have confirmed in your presentation that you were informed on the 5th of May on this, as compared to what was on record yesterday from G4S, who said you were informed on the 9th of May.
We were informed by the DCS controllers. Through them, we were informed of the death, and then later by G4S. Confirmed, sir.
Okay, thank you. That helps. My next point that I want to go to, it's important for me because I sat here listening to you walking away with Honorable Horn and Honorable Breitenbach on this issue. And you're leaving me behind because I'm just not with you on this. You're walking away, and you've even concluded that that walk away is justified. So here's the point. It is correct that in the 2 quarterly reports, you would have put on record, actually, not even on detail, to the portfolio committee about the matter of Thabo Bester, this inmate. But in both reports, so that I'm with you, to start there, that putting on record had to do with the mysterious deaths in the cell of these inmates and nothing to do with an escape. Am I right? Because in all of those 2 reports, you would not have put on record that you have found that he had escaped. You put on record that there is a process to investigate the whereabouts, the circumstances of the alleged death of Thabo Bester in both the quarterly reports. Am I correct in that understanding? Because we have to situate things here properly.
I think, sir, that the one leads to the other. Once you see that the body is not his, you've got to ask, where is he now?
I'm not there yet. I'm working towards that, but I don't want to assume that. So my starting point is that your reports to us, hence there would not have been a discussion. It was saying, we're busy with this investigation on these alleged circumstances around his death. That's what those 2 quarterly reports were about, not about the escape from where I'm sitting.
You're quite right, sir. It was a loose use of the Thabo Bester overview to discuss the mysterious events. And as was pointed out to me, and I conceded earlier, we should have been more precise and we should have been more informative in those 2 quarterly reports.
Okay. Now, I want to try and walk closer to the 3 of you, yourself, inspecting judge, and my 2 other colleagues, on this issue. I am of the firm view, and given your previous role, I suspect that you will be of that view. I would prefer in an investigative process that the satisfaction I will get in that investigation process is when matters are ventilated in court and somebody is found in this way or that way, as compared to me highlighting something prematurely. So in other words, do you succumb to a pressure during your investigation to just release incomplete information? Because that's the first point, perhaps before I proceed.
If you have confidence that it will culminate in an appropriately speedy judicial process, then you should shut up. But if you have doubts, and this is what we did have at JICS, we were grappling in
And your report shows doubts throughout until the end.
But if I may just answer, sir, just the point that I think one should have recourse to Parliament and to trusted, responsible sources in the media as a propellant, to use a loaded term here. So
okay. Let me then indicate this to you, being part of this Justice Committee. If you were to come as the inspecting judge to our committee meeting and say, there's this, I'm not sure about this investigation is not complete, and you want to rush to report that to us, I would have serious problems with that kind of an approach that you do. I will be the first in that meeting. Would you agree with me on that?
I would agree if the significations and indications are inconclusive. But if you, by that stage, by late September, October, already have a post-mortem report and DNA, we don't know who the lady was who claimed she was Thabo Bester's mother. Out of respect for her, I concede her claim. I'm not disputing that. We didn't know. If you have those two things, I think that you then are under a potential obligation to secure the eventual judicial outcome that you put in prospect by using prods and incentives and propellants via the public domain, including parliamentary oversight and including media of integrity.
So this is where, therefore, I stand, that I would rather prefer and I would accept that because this is why I want to close this gap. I am comfortable that I would get a report at a point when that report is ready. And when that is ready, it would not jeopardize both that process. You would not take a case to court where you're already losing it. Would you share that?
I would, dear sir. Forgive me, Honourable Mr. Janchi. I acted solo as inspecting judge. And I know I didn't ask my colleagues at JICS permission. I didn't ask their approval. I do know, sitting here before Parliament, that what I was doing made many of them extremely uncomfortable. This was not the JICS way of doing it. And I know that they would agree with you. And I'm willing to accept criticism as well for maybe not doing it differently, coming to this committee rather than going to the media. Whatever the outstanding task is that Ground Up has fulfilled.
So earlier on, you'd have made what I would call a throwaway comment on this notorious doctor. This throwaway comment, and I want to know if you're making that comment from a distance or it's based on particular evidence and facts. The comment is about she should have been charged for perjury, and you don't know why that has not happened. What is that based on?
No, sir. The affidavit is crammed with falsehoods. Crammed with falsehoods about her relationship to him. I can itemize at least 10 falsehoods. Now, one of the lacks, and maybe I can get my own back on Ms. Breitenbach. When she was a senior figure in the NPA, there weren't enough prosecutions for perjury. We were having in the Joburg High Court, we were having people fabricating divorce certificates, which has enormous impact, mostly on women, a gender leaning impact. And you bring a couple of those husbands and sometimes wives to a criminal court with a charge of perjury, it will have a miraculous effect. So I was only in that context saying that you could have gone after her even then.
Okay. We will come to the subs. But just to conclude that point, both you and I are aware about society's allergy towards cases that are taken to court and they are kicked out, and people got out scot-free. Would you not give the benefit of the doubt to that service that perhaps it would not have come to that point because there would be other variables that it had to consider? And would you still stand by your comment on that?
Perhaps it was a throwaway comment. I think the general point I was making, sir, was that there was already ground to ask SAPS, when are you going to go after this publicly prominent, glamorous doctor? Are you going to allow her to continue unscathed?
The notorious doctor.
Yes.
You're calling her glamorous. That's good.
Yes,
That's okay.
Glamorous. So there were grounds at least to ask SAPS that, and then they could have given you an answer.
Okay. Maybe move to the next point, Chair. So that you just educate us in terms of how JICS operate. You can take away the Mangaonga away from this example now. We might come back to it. So how do you approach the incident report? Sometimes it would include death of an inmate. So my interest here is, do you first get a heads up from DCS that on this day, few hours ago, we had this incident and there's a death of this inmate? And secondly, does that get followed up with a submitted report? So that we walk with you, we understand the road that JICS navigates in all of these processes.
I get weekly reports, sir, and we have a monthly EXCO meeting where these are rehearsed in detail, the figures, the stats. All suicides and all deaths are brought to my attention quickly. There are appeal processes which don't work properly in the Correctional Services Act for people who are segregated and manacled. But all suicides and hunger strikes, I will be alerted immediately of a hunger strike somewhere in the Eastern Cape. So I will be informed very, very quickly about that.
Did that happen in Mangaung Correctional Center? Were you firstly given a heads up on the 3rd of May?
I'm confident that it did. Sorry, sir, I interrupted.
Go ahead. You got me. You're able to read my mind. We're on the same page. I'm not offended.
Thank you. I'm confident to say here that I was informed that week. I don't recall it, but Mr. D'Souza can perhaps...
And that week might include the 5th of May. That's what it is.
I would think so, but may I
so
ask
not on the day.
May I ask Mr. D'Souza?
Please do.
Thank you. When he told me. Mr. D'Souza's recollection is that he told me on the day that we received the report. Is that what you remember as well? Yeah.
On the 5th of May. Okay. Thanks.
I hope it's not a strik vraag.
Nee, ek is klaar met die vraag. So, guards off. Please just lower your guards. Don't have to be, don't pull them up. Thank you. The next point, just to demonstrate I've moved from that point. G4S, in their report yesterday, in their presentation, because it's important for me to deal with this narrative. Because the narrative they presented here was that this is an excellent center. What happened with Thabo Bester was an outlier. It was an exception. This is a narrative we're creating here. And they top that narrative with a commentary of a judge, and I'll come to that. How good that and positive that was, 2 judges, as well as JICS. In terms of this, in the sense that in the top 7 correctional centers, JICS would have said they part of the best in that top 7, and I have no problem with that, because in the field that we operate in, where there are difficult issues every day, there is a need to lift up those that are doing well. But the point here is firstly, when was your last oversight visit to MCC?
We were there
before the 30th of April and all of that.
At the end, yes, sir. At the end of June 2021. Yeah, we visited Pretoria CMAX in the same week, the last week of June 2021. So it was 11 months before, 10 months before this occurred.
And do you want to comment on what was attributed to you, your assessment of the top 7? From you now, not from G4S. Let's hear JICS saying this.
So the terrible conditions we see, and I remember Ms. Breitenbach speaking about St. Albans. We last visited Durban Westville, medium B, and Pietermaritzburg, medium A, in the last month or so. Stanger as well, but none of the symptomatic horrors which we saw in Durban medium B, we saw a cell designed for between 19 and 31 people, which contained 81 people, and these are not remand detainees. We saw the flooding in, so I can go on and tell you the horrors that we often do see. None of these are present in Mangaung Max. From a structural point of view, it is a model prison. But what is the rot, that your word yesterday, and I think it's an appropriate word, beneath that there is functionality which is rotten. And I agree with your statement yesterday that the Thabo Bester wasn't a rare event, a black swan, an untoward experience. It is symptomatic of a degradation of institutional authority, organizational cohesion, and management control. That could not have occurred without a significant degradation of almost every organizational and control function that you should have in a prison. But I'm making the point that you made yesterday.
Okay, thank you. In fact, I've just glanced through the report of Judge Thrawn, who would have visited that because something was picked up about a constitutional court judge and a particular quote listed which must fit the narrative of everything is good and as good as and nice here. One in the section on security, she goes into detail about the decay and the problems of gangsterism in the Mangaung in the same report. And I would have made the point yesterday that don't lift up that commentary outside of what the content in the body of that report is saying. And then I hope members will be able to interact with that, because as a committee, especially us as a subcommittee, we will take particular interest in that. I'm making this point so that we're able to bury this narrative that the Bester thing was just an exception. We now know it was not an exception. It's modus operandi that is happening there in this beautiful place.
Agreed, sir.
Thank you. And Chair, I'm going to leave the
Yes.
time, the 10 minutes that you want to remind me, it's going to go to my deputy, and I'll pause there, but to indicate the point that I think when we go into deliberations, there are matters that we need to get into which have nothing to do with the team in front of us, which are more political matters that we debate as members. And I would want us not to get into those matters now. It's important that we don't do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Janche. Honorable Ramulubeng, Honorable Jele donated her 7 minutes to you.
I hope I use it well, Chair. Because Honorable Janji has donated to the deputy.
Maybe you are a deputy to Honorable
Honorable Jele,
Yes.
yes. I understand this thing of seniority. We seem to be juniors with all us, or seniors are donating time to us. It's been groomed well, Chair, and we take note of it. Chair, let me welcome the report and good afternoon to colleagues in the meeting, and let's welcome the report from JICS led by Judge Cameron. Chair, at first when you noted hands, I had a problem with coming after Honorable Janji because if he seems to be sweeping everything that one wants to raise, leaves you with little few things you want to raise. And I think I would understand, basing that the seat you're actually sitting in has been sitting on it for quite some time with the Section 194. So the reasoning becomes somehow. But Chair, I would want to take it from where he would have raised, especially on Dr. Nandipha's records from JICS in terms of the visitation to the correctional center. If we do have it, or if it was indeed recorded from the systems of G4S, and I would raise this, I don't think it was, Chair. I think the private visit that Honorable Ola mentioned yesterday when raising a question or clarity to G4S on the private visit, it was not administered. It was not booked. Because if it was booked, it wouldn't be private. The records would be known. You would be able to draw in that report. And I say this because in my possession right now, I have something that confirms that the last visit the doctor made to the correctional center was on the 17th of December 2021, recorded to G4S systems. And she further booked a visit again on the 14th of February 2022, but she cancelled that booking. So my question is, I don't think you'll find it, Judge Cameron, that record, but if you do kindly furnish us with that record. Do you think perhaps this is possible, that there were visits that were administered that are not logged in the G4S system, based on your internal investigation and how you have been interacting with the MCC?
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I'll have to check again with our investigators, but we will come back to the committee with the verified log that we received, in which I believe we based our response on. But it may well be that your records are more accurate, but we will come back to the committee with a formal response.
Thank you. We try by all means that when we sit here and question, we question on informed basis, not to bring things that we equally ourselves can't even get away with it, because if it makes no point of this. There is another thing that, in this instance of the private visit, it was exposed by an inmate. Do you have any information on that or are aware of that?
I don't believe we do, ma'am.
Okay, you don't. Because from me, what I have, Judge Cameron, is that there is an inmate that saw the private visit to Thabo Bester on the 16th of April that would have notified. I'm afraid of mentioning the name of the inmate. So I would leave it at that. I'll privately share, but I don't want to. And this inmate was transferred from the MCC to Vereeniging prison. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, we assisted with the Deputy Minister and the National Commissioner. We assisted on a Friday night in getting that person. His name is known to me, and it's in the Groenpunt Correctional Centre.
So you are confirming that there is someone...
No, I can't. I know that he gave that information, but we haven't confirmed it.
So you are aware of the transfer of someone from the MCC to Vereeniging prison?
We helped facilitate it on a Friday. It was the Friday, the 17th of February, that occurred. And I was phoned at 8 o'clock on the Friday evening by Ms. Ntobizodwa Sabuta, our head of regions, to say that the transfer had been effected, and the prisoner has subsequently written to say that to express his appreciation because he is now safe. He and another prisoner, whose name is also known to me, were of the view that their lives were in danger.
Okay. So I'll take it. You might be, you facilitated the process of transfer, but you might not know the basis of that transfer. What was it?
Exactly right. And I might be muddling up instances, but I believe that we are resonating in these instances. We might find later, but we will come back to the committee if I'm muddling up the wrong instance.
But you do confirm that the basis of transferring that inmate was on fearing for his life?
Exactly, and on whistleblowing.
Thank you. For me, that covers why the transfer happened. Judge Cameron, the point was that he is the one that would have alerted on that private visit of Thabo Bester, of Dr. Nandipha to Thabo Bester, which G4S did not administer that in their system. Hence, you'll not find the records for that visit.
2 weeks exactly before the walkout.
Coincidentally. And she becomes the person that wants to collect the body immediately after the incident. Judge Cameron, you made mention, I read somewhere through the reports, I'm not sure, you'd correct me, whether it's 3 inmates or it's 2 inmates, that you would have officiated the transfers of them, bearing in mind, fearing for their lives.
In this regard, it was 2 inmates from Mangaung.
What was the basis for them being transferred in fearing further? This is excluding this one that I would have mentioned now, to Vereeniging.
It's including.
Okay, what was the reason for the other one?
In both cases, the reason for the other one was also extensive whistleblowing allegations of an astonishing nature, after which the inmate told, it was also our investigator, Ms. Daneo Mutumi, whom he told that he felt that he was in peril, because he actually gave names. He said, these are the 4 G4S employees who are doing this. And then he perceived that his life was in danger, and we helped him get out of there.
Okay,
With the assistance, sorry ma'am for interrupting, may I say, of the executive authorities and the National Commissioner.
There is, amongst the letters or the inmates that would have wanted to alert authorities on what would have been perceived as a suicide to being a staged escape, and that has been led by inmates. There were claims from some inmates that they might have or would have witnessed the whole incident, and to such an extent that led to them being transferred because of they would have been feared for their lives. Are this part of the 2 that we have explained, or this is a separate process?
I might be wrong, but I think that is the inmate who said that he was downstairs and able, through the post box view from his cell to be able to see upstairs. And he gave an extensive report about how the fire was ex post facto it occurred after the various goings on in the cell. Then there was a conflagration at a later time. We haven't fitted all of that in to the detailed timeline yet, and that's one of the reasons why a full report was quite intricate to provide. But I think it's the same inmate.
It's the same one with the two that we've just spoken of right now.
Yes, I think so. But I'm suddenly
You're not
I'm getting more
conclusive with
hesitant.
it.
Yes, I think so.
So you're not sure?
Yeah, but I'm moderately confident, but not entirely sure.
You did your own investigations. You did have, based on your report, you did interview inmates and officials of the G4S or the MCC, and this was conducted on the 19th to the 21st of October. So I'm assuming when we raise this, you would be able to give a sense and a chronology of events of that. Bearing on those interviews of inmates, what was your findings? Or what is it that you found conclusive out of it?
Our finding was very clearly that there was skullduggery occurring in and around that cell, that there was skullduggery preceding it in the way that Bester was placed in that cell at late notice. There was skullduggery preceding the fire and after the fire. And the discharge, for example, of the fire extinguisher, all of that was extremely suspicious. So those were our conclusions, that there was markedly, demonstrably untoward incidents preceding, during, and after the alleged suicide of Thabo Bester.
In one of the interviews with the inmates, or when you were interviewing inmates, especially those who were at that Broadway, can you confirm the claims that says inmates were forced to come in and clean the scene immediately after the fire broke, and there was hot water used in cleaning up? I think SAPS would in detail tell us if the tampering of evidence in terms of the scene would have occurred, but I want from your side, when you interviewed inmates, did some of the inmates make mention of that? Because there are claims that says they were called to clean up that scene and used hot water to, and that would have led to some of them fearing for their lives from officials of G4S. Are you able to confirm if that would have happened?
With the permission of the chair, I'd like to defer to Mr. Takadu. I believe the answer is yes, but I'd ask him to answer if I may.
Thank you, IJ. Honorable members, yes, there are evidence from inmates that the inmates were used to clean cell 35 with hot water before SAPS arrived.
How many inmates were there?
It's only one inmate statement that is confirming that.
And where is the inmate right now? Is he still detained in MCC or is transferred somewhere else?
Still detained at MCC.
So we haven't found out that officials would have tried to brutalize him, since there are some inmates that would have indicated that they are being threatened by officials for coming forth with information with regards to that said inmate.
No, ma'am.
You're not sure?
I'm not sure.
We don't have information indicating that, and that the particular source is still in Mangaung. And that information will be included in the finalized version of the report.
There is the inmate that was moved from cell 35. I have the name of the inmate. I think yesterday I even made a request from G4S to provide us with those details, because we have a sequence of when he was moved in Broadway, the reasons why he was moved to Broadway, which cell was moved into, until ultimately that led to him being in cell 35 and to move again for when Thabo Bester was put in. Are you aware of that sequence of events of that inmate?
Of Thabo Bester.
The inmate that was,
Who was
moved in cell 35 to accommodate Bester?
I'm not aware of that. But we know that there was an inmate moved, and we have sources that say, and I think that's included in our report, that the removal of that inmate in order to accommodate Bester in that conveniently placed cell was seen as untoward. We don't know why the previous occupant suddenly lost all his fear on a Saturday night of his previous cell. Why was he suddenly willing on a Saturday night to be relocated, a long weekend Saturday night? So all of this is regarded by inmates and by JICS as being quite untoward and suspicious.
You know the inmate's name. You are aware of who is that inmate? Do you know who is that inmate?
The name is Eric that you are having in our report.
I'm saying, but do you know, let's avoid mentioning inmates' names for their own safety, because we still have G4S operating the MCC. Let's just move away from that, because there are inmates that have been moved on a bearing on an issue that they're fearing for their lives. That's why they've been moved out of the center. I have the names, so let's just avoid. The question is, do you know the name of the inmate that was moved from cell 35 to accommodate Thabo Bester?
Yes, we know.
With your permission, ma'am, may I ask just to interrupt? Our records show that Dr. Magudumana, her last recorded visit was on the 17th of December 2021. She had an appointment to visit on the 14th, Valentine's Day, of February last year, 2022, and that visit was allegedly cancelled.
That's what I said. That's what I've raised.
I'm with apologies, just correcting what information I passed on earlier.
Thank you for confirming that with the information I have is quite correct. I'm not equally misled. You didn't think that it would be prudent for you to inquire with the inmate, since you know who he is, that what led to him cancelling his reasons of going to segregation in the first place?
Definitely it would be, ma'am, and if we haven't done it adequately until now, we will certainly follow up, because it's highly suggestive.
The inmate that wrote to the president subsequent to the minister, are you aware of that inmate?
We've seen that in media reports. Those letters were never passed on to us. We told that JICS was CC'd, and the averment is that those letters were never passed on by G4S. We haven't seen those letters. We're aware of the media reports describing them.
You have not seen the content of the letter, in actual fact?
We haven't.
You have no idea who that inmate is?
As I sit here, no, ma'am.
Did we try to get that info from the G4S staff, especially the lady that would have responded to that letter?
The media reports, if I'm correct, were in the last week or 10 days, and we haven't, to the best of my knowledge, followed up in that period.
When you started speaking, you made mention of how officials of G4S are playing part in smuggling of drugs, contrabands, all those things. Did you try to at least inform SAPS or DCS in what you would have found in the center? Or you assume it's happening, activities that are happening?
I do assume, because that is our regular process. Yes. I assume that is done, because that is what we ordinarily will do.
You have done?
Yes. So I'm assuming that is what we have done, ma'am. So my answer is a lawyer's answer of some ambiguity, but yes, the answer is yes.
Judge Cameron, I'm not familiar with the law side of things. I'm not sure if I'm going to take part on it anytime soon, so I'd prefer to say for you to confirm yes or no, so that I equally am able to make follow-ups or not on that matter, with due respect. So I would take it that yes, you would have informed SAPS and DCS on that process of what you might think is happening. It was alleged that one of the inmates or some of the inmates would have made mention that Thabo Bester was equally dealing inside the center, selling stuff. There's where I read as well that on the actual day of the incident, he had a lot of money on top of his bed, whilst he's having his laptop and so forth and so on. Do you perhaps think what officials were smuggling in, it has a link with Thabo Bester, or their dealings are linked, or they were dealing together in that sense?
We know from our meeting with the on-the-ground G4S personnel in Bloemfontein on the same day that we met SAPS, the last question I asked them right at the end of our meeting was Thabo Bester a powerful figure in this facility? And they both said instantly yes, the two officials present. And the one official afterwards indicated to us that Thabo Bester had made enormous amounts of money while inside. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think that the question put to G4S yesterday about the video appearance at the Sandton Convention Center in 2018 was so significant, because he was continuing, and that's why Ms. Breitenbach's anxieties are so pertinent, because he was carrying on his fraudulent activities from within the center and making, as you've indicated, ma'am, a huge amount of money. That certainly was signaled to us by the two G4S officials that we quizzed in early February this year.
Thank you. With you would have made mention when we started that Thabo Bester has been tried to be moved 3 times and so forth into segregations and so forth and so on. When you realize that there is a lot of movement around this particular inmate, didn't that trigger you to investigate or just pay attention to this said inmate? A worrying fact in that instance.
This we discovered only after the walkout, stroke escape. But before that event, we have to leave operational details to the personnel. So intrinsically, a set of movements won't necessarily be suspicious or trigger suspicion.
Judge Cameron, in your interaction with the executive authority, whether it's the minister or the deputy minister in this instance, did you give an assurance that with absolute certainty this is an escape, or you would have preempted not sure in that instance, so that at least we leave here knowing that both the minister and the deputy minister would have known by this and decided to turn a blind eye or not?
I don't think they turned a blind eye, if you would ask me from my inference. But I also couched both my telephone conversation with Minister Lamola and my letter to him of 26th of October, again in lawyerly language. I said to him, though, this is seems beyond belief. Indications point to the conclusion that. So that's the way I put it. I didn't say we know, and it is certain that, because who knows whether some of what is put before us might itself be bogus. We have the difficulty in JICS, and we have it even in Mangaung, that prisoners, and it's not surprising except to a very naive person, prisoners don't always tell us the truth. So we have a lot of complaints. Most of the complaints are justified because prison is an awful experience. Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke used to tell us that in the Constitutional Court. But nevertheless, we have the difficulty that we don't always know what is being told to us as truth. So that's why I say to Minister Lamola, this seems crazy, But this is what we think might have or must have happened, and that's the way I couched it.
So you would have poised it, not being certain. It was just a thinking at that. It's not informed by the investigation that would have came before you. It's a thinking on the basis of your preliminary report would suggest that there's something fishy on this.
Exactly, but based on the facts available to us in October, which now seem rock hard facts, but at the time we were shaking our heads.
Was this discussions, or what you have reiterated now, was this written on the 26th when you wrote the letter, or was this still the telephonic discussion that you would have had?
I repeated very much, either before or after the letter, I don't remember when, but what I said in paragraph 3 of my letter, and I'm indebted to my CEO for saying that, I said, Dear Minister, we're still investigating, SABS is also involved. JICS has been deeply concerned by a seemingly highly untoward incident at Mangaung. Even at this stage, there are indications, despite the ongoing investigations, that with the collusion of G4S employees and others, a fire was staged in the single cell of Thabo Bester, the notoriously named Facebook rapist, and a corpse was smuggled into the cell with the objective of faking his death and facilitating his escape. This is on the 26th of October. And then sorry ma'am, may I just, forgive me, may I just read the next sentence? Much of this appears to exceed probability or even credence. Further investigation is proceeding, and we are in the receipt of inquiries from the media. I'm sorry for interrupting you, ma'am.
This was based on the preliminary report, the letter.
Yes.
And then you would have concluded the investigation. When did you send a final report?
The final report has not yet come out, but we finalized the preliminary report. May I just ask Mr. Takadu? We're busy finalizing it, ma'am. When did we send out the provisional report?
Okay, I guess we do not have the final report.
Thank you,
We're
ma'am.
still working on the preliminary report. The segregation process of inmates being moved, or what becomes the role of JICS? Do you get reported on the process before an allocation of a cell gets to be given to an inmate, or do you get reported after that process has been done?
We have to be notified when it's been done, so it is reported to us. May I say, ma'am, that the whole mandatory reporting system is very insufficient. I almost said lamentable. It's DCS has been trying to improve it through the e-corrections online system. There is an appeal available for manacling and for segregation. And please, may I add an important footnote. The Correctional Services Act, when it was enacted in 1998, made provision for solitary confinement. That was taken out of the 2004 amendments. There were a whole series of amendments in 2004. Instead, there was a limited form of segregation permitted. We have concluded that at Pretoria CMAX and at Ebongweni, there is in fact solitary confinement happening. We sent our report to this committee, and we hope that this committee would release it to the media. I don't believe that has happened yet.
Judge Cameron, you are walking away with me, and I don't want you to walk away with me.
My apologies.
I want to stay where I am, which is the MCC, G4S. I can see you what you do, you know about it, but I want us to focus on the MCC issue. Do you get reported on inmates being taken to segregation when the process unfolds, or after the process has unfolded? That's what I want to know.
When a segregation has been effected, when a correctional official with the approval of the head of centre exercises his or her statutory power to segregate someone, that fact having been performed must be reported to us.
So in this instance, you would have been aware of that process being taken on Thabo Bester?
It should have been reported to us, and it wasn't. The last one wasn't at all when it occurred on the 30th of April.
When did you know about the segregation of Thabo Bester?
I think we can get back to you. I don't know when I knew about it, but we can check our segregation reports. They are sent to Mr. Rapule. Yeah. But
Judge Cameron. Honorable Ramolubeng,
10 minutes.
you are now left with the credited time.
Thank you, Chair. I don't like that credited time. Justice Cameron, in your response to Honorable Glennis Breitenberg, you mentioned that you shared the information with Grown Up that you would have received. How did you guard against the possibility of this jeopardizing any SAPS criminal investigation, since you knew that the process is underway, especially being conducted by SAPS?
it's a very fair question, if I may say so. I didn't guarantee it. I relied on my belief in the utter integrity of the editor, whom I've known for a long time, for 23 or 24 years, since he was the treasurer of the Treatment Action Campaign and played a significant part there. So I trust his integrity greatly. The second thing, ma'am, to answer your question, is that I supplied Ground Up only with publicly accessible information. So after Judge Danisa had gone and written to me her findings, she wrote privately to me. She later lodged the report, which is now timeline.
I believe the findings that you would have shared with Ground Up,
Yes.
you would have shared with SAPS.
It's a good question, ma'am. I don't believe we did at that time, but it's a good question.
You didn't think it's an actual fair thing?
No, it's a good
Since
question.
they are the ones conducting the investigations.
We may have fallen. I will check up and indicate the correct position if I'm wrong in making the concession now. But if we did, the burden of your question that we should have done so is correct, and I concede that.
Judge, you equally mentioned that with hindsight we are all wiser, and that this matter was just beyond belief, that what has transpired, the escape. Would you regard an anonymous email as a credible information or source of information?
An anonymous or pseudonymous email. It depends on what is said inside it. If it's a 2-line email without any backup, just saying someone landed on the moon last night, I would not regard it as credible.
What is the relationship between JICS and the department?
It's a respectful, at times spiky working relationship. I think it's spiky on both sides.
I don't want to get to the spiky part. I might not be able to manage or contain it. Do you have bilateral meetings between you and the department?
Initiated by the current National Commissioner of his own accord. Those meetings, I think my last meeting with his predecessor was on the 4th of December 2020. So for the last 18 or 20 months of of his tenure, I didn't meet with him. But soon after taking over, first as acting NC and then as appointed National Commissioner, the current National Commissioner said, we've got to get these quarterly meetings over, so all credit to him.
How often do you sit with this current National Commissioner?
At least every quarter, but we are in frequent contact by SMS and by telephone and by letter.
So it's a better relation than the predecessor one?
That's very spiky, ma'am. But the answer is yes.
Thank you, Judge Cameron. With all these inquiries that you have received, especially basing the internal investigations that you would have done, what would have been your expectation for the National Commissioner, given that the final report is not yet received? What was your expectation, or what would have expected of him to do, pending the final report?
I would have wanted him, also with the virtue of hindsight, to have kicked butt more quickly. Kick someone's posterior. I reckon they say it nicely, kick butt.
Okay. That's the spiky part. Chair, I think I would have rested or exhausted my questions. Thank you so much, and I hope all the outstanding information that one would have requested, they would then come forth so that they equally assist us in this process. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ramulubeng. Honorable Yako.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just put this here.
You have no credit.
It's okay. I don't need credit. I'll be fine. I hope the mic is working right now. I have to ask. Thank you very much, Judge Cameron and Mr. Vic Missa, for your very comprehensive and very detailed presentation to us. This is exactly what we were asking of G4S, and you outlined and highlighted things that G4S, as a primary holder of the situation, should have given to us. And I thank you for that. This timeline is very thorough, it's very clear, it's action-based, it's action-orientated, and I think, judging from your body language, as when G4S was presenting and we were posing questions to them, I think they've made your jobs very hard. It's blatantly obvious that it was hard to cooperate with them, or they didn't want to cooperate with you. That's obvious. So I'm going to look at the report that you provided with us, and some of the things I may say may not be questions, but perhaps opinions or seeking opinion, and maybe may not be directed at you, but maybe your opinion on the other entities that you had to work with regards to this case. So the events that happened between May and August, I'd like to know, you say that in May 25th there was a sworn statement from Detective Flyman. Do you have that as part of your report?
I think we referred to it, but we obtained that later. We obtained that later, if I'm correct, when we met the SAPS in Bloemfontein.
So it is forming part of your report?
Yes, correct. Sorry, ma'am, yes.
It's fine. Secondly, on the 10th of August, you say that SAPS furnished you with copies of the autopsy report and DNA tests and requested these tests not be made public. Was G4S a part of this consultation?
I believe not.
And do you know why?
I don't know why, ma'am. May I ask, Mr. Takadu had not yet been brought, he'd just been brought in. May I ask Mr. D'Souza to explain why? Mr. D'Souza, please.
Honourable Chair, I will answer the question.
Sure.
Thank you so much. I think at that stage, Madam Sumi was actually the lead investigator. She was dealing with it at Bloemfontein at the local level. And Mr. Tikadu was only brought in at a later stage from the 15th of August, some 5 days later. So at that point in time, your question was very clear whether G4S was part of that a meeting that was held, and they were not.
Okay, that's fine. On the 15th of August, you say there's more meetings between JICS, SAPS, DCS, and G4S. And what is interesting to me is that G4S nowhere mentions it in their report. There's no 15th of August in your timeline. There's nothing. You talk about May and nothing about the 15th of August on your report. And it's interesting to me why that is. Did you ask why and who is responsible for the missing video footage on that day?
Definitely. It was a source of, it sounds self-righteous, but disgust and outrage on our part. Why? Why do you have all of this if the only time you needed it, it isn't there? So we definitely asked after that.
And just for clarity, the missing video footage, you're talking about the time when it was switched off to the time when it was switched back on.
9 hours and 30 plus minutes.
Was is it Integraton part of that delegation that you met with?
No, we weren't aware of Integriton until much later.
So G4S never divulged that they had consulted with Integratron at the time?
Sorry, ma'am?
So G4S never told you that they consulted with Integratron at the time?
I think we did know that no, we were told by G4S. We were definitely told by G4S that this was subcontracted.
On your report, you also speak to the regional commissioner, Subashini Mutni. And for me, I don't want to pose it to them now. I think I would just like your opinion. And I think you alluded to the fact that perhaps it was more of a hierarchical issue for her to come to the party. But do you normally find that that is the course of action when you approach an area commissioner and they don't respond in a positive light, or they are reluctant to meet you halfway?
It's another spikiness, ma'am, because we have complex relations between the National Commissioner and, in this case, his regional commissioners. The KwaZulu-Natal Regional Commissioner is a conspicuous case in point. So I'm not aware of what, I think some regional commissioners are better able to cooperate hierarchically. I should just add that Regional Commissioner Moodley says that she did not go white in that meeting.
Okay. Okay, I don't know what that means.
On the 4th of November last year.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Judge, there's on the 21st of October, Judge Daniso says that the head of the prison was confirmed that the postmortem led to SAPS docket being changed to murder. And it seems to me there's so many red flags to this, and G4S had no willingness to cooperate with you. And it feels like there's some sort of heist that G4S was taking us on, and it seemed to not want to admit, because nowhere also is this part of their report. And when they were compiling this report, did they confer with you?
No, they didn't confer with us, but I agree with the preparatory statement that you made.
Yeah. Again, DCS on the 18th does not hand over the report, but says the investigation is at an advanced stage and reports difficulty in obtaining information from G4S. Did you take this as normal? Did you take this at face value? Is DCS not obliged to have a report from G4S as part of their partnership?
We took that view. Our way of working is that we wait for DCS's report. And in this case, we'd have to wait for both G4S and for DCS's report. That's one of the reasons why we took so long. We were waiting.
Did you ask G4S directly?
Yes, repeatedly.
And what did they say?
They said it's not ready, or they'll make it available to us, and then there was some delay. And we did after the meeting with Mr. Renzo Smith. We wanted it in advance of the meeting, and we didn't get it. But we got their preliminary report afterwards, which was not of informative value to us.
And you've got proof of this back and forth between you and G4S
Yes.
and the lack of cooperation for
It's
you?
all, thank you, ma'am. It's in the correspondence.
And then you write to the minister, and I've just listened to your letter that you wrote to him. Have you ever had any instances where you write concerns to the minister, and what normally happens when you raise a concern that is of matter to you, to the minister within your relationship? How do they respond? Do they say to you, we acknowledge receipt? Has there ever been lack of action? Is this a normalcy that you don't get any response from them?
We are in a lobbying relationship with the minister. His staff is very accessible to us, Mr. Sorella, Ms. Mobu, Mr. Piri, and other members of his office. The minister has, heaven knows, he doesn't need me to say it, he has enormous responsibility. So I'm lobbying him right now about lifers, and I don't want to do what Ms. Ramolabeng rightly accused me of taking you down a different road. But the lifers issue is crucial to JICS. So I buttonholed him yesterday morning, and I've been buttonholing Ms. Mobu. So the Thabo Bester was one of a number of issues that we were trying to crowd onto his table.
And what intervention were you seeking from him immediately in his capacity at that time?
Also kicking butt.
And he did not kick butt?
I don't know. I think he did. I don't know.
When did he kick butt? Because it seems to me that nothing happened after this.
I can't say that, and I'm not trying to protect the minister. If I had better information, I know that he was concerned because he was responsive to me in the telephone call. But what he did or what his staff did, I know his staff are also very concerned about correctional issues. But it's a big portfolio, and of course you were entirely unaware because you were in an opposition party of what was happening in December. So there were a range of claims,
I think you've been too kind, Judge. I think you're being too kind to the minister.
Maybe so, ma'am.
Yeah, because now you're adding other issues that we all have to go through in this line of politics. So I don't think that, for me, is reason enough for him not to respond to you. Again, G4S does not. G4S does an internal investigation. Did they hand that to you? So you received it on the 10th of November. And again, this footage is incomplete. When you say the footage is incomplete, is it still the time when they switched it off to the time when they switched it back on?
Exactly.
And did you write a reply towards that?
I believe we did. I have a recollection of doing so. I can't put my finger on it now, but
Did
it
they
was
respond back
outrageous
to you?
to us. Yes, if need be, we can.
Did they respond back to you?
Allow me, it'll be one of the list of things that we'll get back to the committee on. Thank you.
Okay. Again, I think I'm a bit worried that this Mr. Smith did not form part of the delegation here, because it seemed to me that you conferred with him a lot, and he's not the person to account here. In fact, even the investigator at G4S was insufficient in relaying proper information to us as a committee. And that, for me, is an issue, because it seems to me that G4S deliberately did not bring the ones that were at the core or at the center of what happened during that day. Do you know where he is right now?
I don't know. My impression
Mr. Smith.
from the meeting with Mr. Smith is that he didn't have robust first-hand operational experience of incarceration. My impression was that he may have had an accounting or other background. I'm guessing, but this is an answer to your question.
But on what capacity were you meeting with him?
As the one described by Ms. Breitenbach as the operations CEO of G4S in Middle Eastern Africa.
At a high level?
Exactly, covering all the, again, you may say to me I'm being too kind, but I think that he covered all of G4S's guarding, carceral and other activities.
And what informed you dealing with him instead of dealing with the lower fruits?
We had a meeting the next week in Bloemfontein with the hands-on people, the people who did the tough job in Mangaung.
Okay, thank you, Judge. Again, I'm concerned about Ms. Moodley's lack of assistance because, again, on the 6th of February, you note that the Commissioner takes that the matter is still under consideration by contract of management of DCS, and they're still waiting a report. Did that not raise a flag to you that there's no or DCS is a bit afraid of G4S for some reason? Or maybe there's a power dynamic there that shouldn't be?
Quite possibly. I would be speculating, but the proposition you're putting is a fair one.
And did they not, and why did they explain to you? Because they say, again, R.C. Moodley and her team will not be of assistance. Did you ask why?
I didn't ask why, because we were hoping to meet her the next day. But it seemed to indicate to me that this was being taken to national office, and that the commissioner himself, national commissioner himself, was keeping hands on this.
Yeah, I'm just going to make observations. Again, I'm very concerned with the lack of cooperation from DCS and the lack of will to meet you halfway as JICS, because, again, on the 9th of February, you're still begging DCS to conclude the investigation into what happened a year before. And normally, what is the process when that happens, when you have investigations of that nature? How soon are investigations concluded?
They do take time. Maybe we should be examining our own processes. We have been doing that. Again, I'm taking us down Ms. Rommelbring's side road. But we've introduced a complaints matrix, and so that we get more responsive to complaints. Maybe we should do the same with investigations, so that they hurried up. I cannot give you a figure for the average time taken for investigations, but they do take time, particularly because we wait for the DCS investigation report, so that we can see what DCS has been told by its own officials, and then we can finalize ours and say, well, we disbelieve this, or we do believe this, or we don't believe the inmates, or whatever conclusions we reach.
Judge, again, you keep reiterating in your report that you keep engaging, you keep begging them. On the 9th of March, you are telling them that you have a suspicion, and there's a report that Mr. is alive, well, and dangerous. It seems to me with your capacity of investigating, obviously you have many cases that you're investigating. However, this was at a level where you were consistently begging DCS, begging G4S to come to the party and assist you. And what do you think should be the recourse towards their lack of action in meeting you in the time frame? Because you, honestly, I think the part that is concerning for us is that this person is alive, he's well, he is moneyed, he's dangerous. What should be the recourse for us moving forward around the lack of action with your stakeholders in inhibiting your investigation to its full outcome?
Thank you very much for asking that. May I answer it by speaking about the new JICS bill, which will be before this committee. The bill says that DCS, if it refuses to implement a recommendation, must tell us why. So, for example, we will make a recommendation that every DCS investigation be finished within 6 weeks, say. Okay. Then the National Commissioner will say to me, but 6 weeks is unreasonable. And then I will say, why? So there will be a mechanism which we don't have at the moment. We are donkey boss, cap in hands with DCS. We've got to wait because we've got no power at all apart from our voice. And as Ms. Breitenbach says, we have got a voice.
Yes.
And we have got power to investigate. We have got power to set up even commissions. We could have set up, the statute says, we can set up a formal commission or get someone else to go in. We could have exercised those powers, but actually over the operations within a correctional center, we have no power.
And you've never raised this before the JICS bill that's coming to the committee now. There's never been a concern because it seems to me there's disjuncture in the whole Department of Justice. In fact, there's no correlation between the different entities. Has there never been a concern before?
It's again, ma'am, if you don't mind me saying so, a very good question. There are different models of outside inspection of carceral facilities across the world. A few models make it compulsory to implement recommendations. Most of them are like our model, which is no power. A big group of them, which we are going to ask this committee to endorse to Parliament, is in the middle, where you either must implement or you have to implement unless with good reason.
Okay.
So there are various models one can follow, but we have raised this consistently.
Okay. Again, you write on the 23rd of March that you wrote to the Deputy Minister, Nkosi Patekile Olomisa, in requesting his personal attention to the Bester case. And what did he do?
I think that the inference Mr. Horn or Ms. Breitenbach made was that he must have spoken to the Commissioner because the report came soon afterwards. I haven't asked him what he did.
Okay.
Honorable Yago, you are left with 10 minutes.
It's fine. It's 10. Judge, in your opinion, and I'm sure you've worked with G4S before, have you ever done other investigations around the Mangaung Correctional Center? And how much cooperation have you received from G4S around other cases? And maybe can you make an example of a certain case that was raised and flagged to you? Because we know, as we went to the Correctional Center last year, we raised concerns at G4S because what they showed us was a pretty picture, as you've said. It was beautiful, well run, clean, everything looked proper. And again, I must emphasize that that was a formal visit. So we had told them that we'd come and do a visit to them. So it was obvious that that would have been what we'd see, is what would be shown. But we had heard, we had people telling us, we had inside prisoners who were telling us of the amounts of violence that happened within the correctional center, the amounts of corruption that happened within the correctional center. And we raised it as a committee that time. And we were told that no, everything is fine. But what investigations have you done with them, and how much cooperation have you received from them on prior cases to this one?
Thank you, ma'am. I believe we have received cooperation in the past. Can I make another wayward point, according to Ms. Romelbing, that the most hardened criminals are sent to CMAX, to Ebongweni, and to G4S's facility at Mangaung. We have been in a long wrestling, a lobbying wrestling with the department in order to get the protocols by which people are sent there revised and supervised so that it's not used punitively. That's a big issue still. So, but G4S doesn't have power over who gets sent to them.
Okay.
And they're getting paid for a full facility. So there's a difficulty about that as well. What when someone is
Judge, you're not answering me.
Sorry, ma'am?
You're not answering me.
No.
You're moving away from me. He's walking away from me.
No, you're right, ma'am.
Yeah,
I'm
walking
using
away.
this as a lobbying occasion for our
I've got
ability.
5 minutes left, so I need to use it very wisely.
Please forgive
It's
me.
not too, yeah.
So we have received cooperation in the past. Thank you.
In the past, great, thank you. You spoke about skullduggery that happens there, and many times. You spoke also about the issue and the concern that you have with the triple P structure of G4S. And I want to ask you, on your personal opinion, do you not think that G4S's brazenness, their utter refusal, and the fear from DCS to engage with you and make G4S account, not perhaps politically motivated because there's entities within G4S that stand to gain from G4S staying as a triple P partner there?
I'm absolutely sure you're right, ma'am.
So that's your opinion. Okay. Lastly, on this issue of Thabo Bester's segregation, so you don't have any record of them having applied to you for that?
I don't believe we do, ma'am.
Okay. Also, just one last thing. Regards to my last question, is your investigation, ultimately when you bring it to the committee, having any recommendations with regards to the triple P structure of G4S and how it's modeled in a way that puts you at a weaker position as an investigative entity?
No, we haven't gone there yet, but it is a fertile angle to take up.
Thank you very much, Judge. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Yako. You were left with 10 minutes. But I can see that you don't want to credit anyone. No, yes. I think before we break for lunch, Honorable Ngola will come after lunch. We have organized a dinner. We anticipate that we are going to work until very, very late. But that is dependent on you members. We won't push you, but the longer you want to stay here, we will oblige. We shall oblige as the chairperson. I shall oblige. So we will push until midnight, but it is dependent on you. Then if midnight there are still many questions, we will push again, but it is all in your hands. Yes. It is all in your hands. Can we break for lunch? It's now 1:05 until 2 o'clock.